Being that 6 o'clock, I'm going to call this meeting of the Enfield Select Board to order. And we're going to start with approval of the minutes. We have both regular and non-public minutes for the June 19th meeting in your packet. What's your pleasure?
I thought they looked good. I would move we accept them as presented.
You have a second?
I'll second, they were fine.
Any questions or comments on the minute? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor of approving? Aye. Opposed, abstention? Okay, Eric abstains. Thank you. Moving on to board reports. We'll start at the end of the table. Eric, do you have anything?
We had a planning board meeting last week. There was not a lot of actual business. A little discussion in Lebanon is moving forward with some action potentially on 5-6 roads that run into that are continuations of the Enfield 5-6 roads off Methodist Hill Road between Methodist Hill and I guess it's 120. So there's some discussion about it. And the planning board had previously sort of sent an opinion from the Enfield Planning Board and just reiterated the same opinion that the Enfield Planning Board's in favor of towns maintaining Class 6 roads. And that if Lebanon were to make a change, it would sort of have a side impact on the Enfield Class 6 roads. And other than that, the Upper Valley Land Trust has a cell tower on some of their property. Nothing was needed. They were just sort of informing people of some changes to the ownership and lease around the cell tower. Yeah, I guess that's it.
Any questions or comments for Eric? Okay. Alice? Got anything?
The Enfield Village Association had their Shaker 7 race on June 24th. It was really well attended. I think they had at least 30 more runners than they did last year. And we tried some new things, well, new to me, music and Ed graciously was the leadoff rider. And it was fantastic. And they're having their debrief meeting this week to figure out what improvements for next year. And then as far as the Heritage Commission, their last meeting was largely focused on Old Home Days and preparations for that and all of the events that they were supporting. That's all I got.
Great. Tracy?
The Energy Committee is the recipient of the good news of people's rates dropping again due to the competition that's been established by the new programs. They've also hired a full-time director, and so we can anticipate that those kinds of competition will remain in place now on a regular basis. All of rates that we're looking at are below, well below, what even Liberty Utilities is attempting to compete with at this point. So there's a great deal of success with the rate structure at the energy level within coalition.
Excellent. Okay, John?
Nothing to report this week.
Conservation Commission met last Thursday, and let's see. I think the major item is going to be the Trail Master volunteer appointment, which we'll discuss later tonight, so I'm not going to go into that. Dr. Tice did hand out some information on how to read dredge and fill permits, for educational items, and that was it's a pretty short meeting. Do you have any questions or comments on board reports? Okay. Moving on, we have town manager's report.
Okay, I'm gonna just start off by reminding the select board, we'll send out some more information this week, but we have our retreat this next Sunday, our board retreat. I'm gonna schedule that at 8 o'clock so we can get it done as early as possible to get out of there. So we will be in this building, the DPW building for this meeting here, and we'll meet for however long it takes. Did talk with Russ and he expects it to be in that 3 to 4 hour range. So it should be right around lunchtime that we're getting done. On the staffing side of things, the police department continues to look for 2 more officers. We continue to look for. We haven't really gotten many applications, but we'll continue to look for that. We did post since our last meeting a grounds worker position. We had an open vacancy for ground worker. We did hire a temporary person, so we have a second person working with Rick to keep the lawns being mowed and that, but we have some interviews scheduled for this week to fill the full-time position. So moving forward with that, we have received a letter of resignation from one of our DPW members, so we'll be, actually, I think we released it today, advertisement for a light equipment operator. So we'll be looking for a new light equipment operator to add to the fleet. Just to let you guys know that the person that is leaving us for a job, DPW job with another town for Morphin. We continue to have those issues. Our deputy clerk resigned mid-June, just a little bit after our last meeting. Her last day with us as assistant clerk was June 30th. We have advertised that position and we did interviews today and we will be making a job offer. So look forward to filling that position, and that's kind of where we're at with staffing right now. A couple people short in DPW, but we're working on that. Public safety building and Whitney Hall projects. I haven't talked with our contractor since I've been back, so I don't really know what was happening with the RFPs. We're out. The one thing that I have been doing is working with the library and the library trustees a little bit, mostly Kate from the library, on some town logistics on moving when we move the town offices, what we're gonna do, where we're gonna put people, and we'll continue working with the library trustees and staff to figure that out and let you guys know as soon as we have any more details on that. With that, I don't know if I updated you last time, but we have completed the boundary survey and everything for the Shaker Hill Granite property. And we're preparing the packet to go to the planning board for subdivision on that. And I'm starting to work with the attorney to draw up the legal paperwork to get that purchase finished. With the July storms, as you guys may be aware, all areas of damage are now passable with completed temporary repairs. There are separate culverts that will need to be replaced. And the settling pond at the corner of Holly and Lock Haven will need to be cleaned out. But other than that, most of the minor repairs are done. They continue to work around town, and then we're gonna be needing to look at some larger upgrades on some of the culverts and things as we move forward with repairs. I do wanna thank the staff for that. I was away on vacation. I was keeping my fingers on the pulse of it as well as I can, but it appears that everybody did a very good job attending to that. As soon as I got involved, they let me know really quickly that the damage was being mitigated and that they were already keeping track of all the data for FEMA. So they did a great job with that, and I'd like to thank all the staff. The water project on Maple Street, the water main is now complete and the services are connected to the new main. The interconnection to the marsh well and demolition of the old chlorinator shed is scheduled to happen this week. And once that's done, they can consider this project to a point of substantial completion. So we're nudging in on the end of that project. They did drill a second test well, and our initial findings, what they've seen before final analysis, is really promising that the second well is gonna produce more than the well we drilled last fall testing. So we're kind of hopeful that that'll move forward. We were hoping to finish the inspection of the sewer mains with the cameras, but the wet weather we've been having's been delaying that stuff. We were looking for wet weather to see where infiltration was, but it's just been a little too much lately, so. The Oak Hill Road Bridge is moving forward. The south side abutment's complete and the footings for the north side are being poured tomorrow. The open channel that we did have held up well during the water that we had last week, the flooding. So we're happy with that, but it has, that project's been slowed down a little bit with some of the delays in concrete delivery. We're sitting around the area, so that project continues to move forward. And then just a couple quick updates. Paving for the most part in town has been completed. There'll be some shoulder gravel and stuff to do, but they got the paving projects completed. And Pathways Consulting is working with the state and ourselves on citing the enhanced crosswalk units that we didn't have arrived. So we're still trying to finish up that project. Should be done in the near future. And other than that, I was working with the town manager group with Sean Mulholland and Alex Torpy from Hanover and a couple other town managers. And we started talking about the sharing of resources, and Sean Mulholland kind of spearheaded this up, but their DPW got involved and Jim Taylor represented the town of Enfield, went to that meeting, and we're really putting together a more robust plan on the sharing of resources, looking how we can share major equipment, and we're also looking at how we can go in on a multi-town consortium for RFP, paving, and sand and gravel and those types of things to see if we can get some savings through scale. So, I think to thank Jim for being part of that. And I did read the news from that meeting. He's taken on quite a few projects to help spearhead that. That's what I have for a town manager.
Questions or comments from the board?
I think there should be a public thank you to the city of Lebanon for allowing their resources to come to the aid during the recent high water. They sent trucks our way with gravel, and that was terrific. It's nice to have that sort of a collaboration that you want to expand upon, of course, and I think it's terrific. It's just great. I know we helped out at a certain point back on Slayton Hill a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it's been a really good relationship that we've been fostering and growing. Not that it hasn't been good in the past, but they brought over chlorinator pumps and things when we had our water problem. Then we sent 2 trucks and some guys to haul some heavy stone for them a couple weeks ago when they had a
Yeah.
washout problem. And same thing, they had a couple trucks with some.
I think
gravel
that
here.
collaborative effort is terrific. Just
It's
terrific.
really been helpful.
Also want to make a public comment to thank all of those involved. I don't know if we're going to mention at some point in the agenda, the Old Home Day success. And I want to make sure that that gets publicly mentioned as not only a tremendous weather success. I don't know where we got that from, but, just the effort of all of the people involved in Old Home Days and how terrific those events really were. It was just great. Just terrific.
They did a nice job with the 5-minute pivot with the tornado warning on Sunday as well. That was not welcome weather on top of everything
Exactly.
else. So certainly worked very hard to make it go well, and then to also stand on their toes on top of our on their toes.
It was great.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board on the town manager's report, Brad? Questions or comments on the town manager's report from the public that's present? Dave?
Just a question, when will things, living on Maple Street, when will things be, back to, normal paving and restoration of people's yards? And when will this process be repeated for the sewer?
I don't know what they're gonna do with sewer, but we'll be finishing substantial completion this week, and then they'll be doing the final details of that. And then we'll have to put out an RFP and stuff for paving. So paving will be a little less away, but they should be working on cleaning yards up and stuff once the substantial completion of it.
Next year?
It might be, we'll have to see. Depends when it gets done.
Further questions or comments on the town manager's report from the public here in front? Look at the folks online. Do we have any questions or comments from the folks online on the town manager's report? Seeing no hands raised, I'd like to move on. It looks like there's no communications listed in the packets. And we are going to move on to the business of the evening. Ed's going to tee up the Johnston Property Use Committee recommendations. And then we are going to invite, actually, if you want to come forward, would you join us? Because I believe you chair. That way it's just a little easier for the folks online to see and hear. And I know you substantially helped guide this effort, so I'll let you tee it up and.
So while Nate's coming up, I'm sure you guys have heard and talked to people, but, you know, the Johnston Property Use Committee went very, very well. I think it was a great committee that did a good job talking with the stakeholders of, select board had put forward with them to talk to, but also doing some brainstorming and making sure they contacted, any party that they thought might be involved. The meetings went well, and it was, I think, a really, really good process to get feedback. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Nate. He can talk about the process a little more and then the recommendation of the committee.
Yeah, sure. So for those of you who don't know me, Nate Miller, I served as chair of the Johnston Property Use Committee, what we affectionately refer to as the JPUC for short. I'll walk through kind of the background and our process and our thought process behind the recommendations that we provided to you. I believe all of you got a memo detailing our recommendations in your packet, so hopefully you've got a little bit of background information already. We first met in December of 2022. We were given a two-pronged charge from the select board, the first of which is to determine or make a recommendation, I should say, about whether the town should retain the town-owned property on Johnston Drive, and if so, what the future use of the property should be. We set a target of 6 months for the work of the committee, with the goal of being complete with our work by the end of June, and we met that goal, I'm proud to say. Thanks to our committee basically meeting every 2 weeks for about 6 months. As part of our original charge, the select board asked us to reach out to certain parties, which we did, as Ed said. Those included the Master Plan Task Force, the Mascoma Lake Association, the Conservation Commission, and the Recreation Commission. Beyond that, we also reached out to the Friends of the Northern Rail Trail, as well as local snowmobile groups. So we had specific sessions between the committee and the Recreation Commission and the Conservation Commission and those different town committees. And those were really helpful and very good, productive sessions. In addition to that, we held a session and did a specific invitation to all of the abutters to the property and met with basically an entire evening dedicated to a conversation with the abutters to the property, which yielded some really helpful feedback, as well as 2 public forums, one virtually and one in person, which were reasonably well attended. So when we talk about the Johnston Drive town-owned property, it is 4 parcels. I included an image on the memorandum that you have in your packets. We refer to these parcels as 3, 4, 5, and 6 based on their tax map numbers. And so we have a different set of recommendations related to each of these parcels. I will say that there is no single recommendation or set of recommendations that's going to please everybody in this process. I think everybody on our committee knew that going into it. It's a complicated task that we were charged with. And there are a lot of different opinions. There is no binary choice with this property. There's a complete spectrum of choices from one end to the other. And so we tried very hard to balance our recommendations based on the public good of waterfront recreation with the policy document that is the master plan that was just recently adopted that has some policy recommendations that directly tie to this, as well as mitigating doing our best to mitigate abutter concerns that we heard about, as well as the concerns from members of the public about the financial capability of the town and what these properties may offer in terms of offsetting some of the expenditures that the town has been facing and how these properties might be able to help the financial position of the town. So with all of that in mind, we lay out a set of recommendations here that did our best to balance those things. And I will say that of the members of the committee, The members of the committee ourselves went into this with open minds. We had no predetermined conclusions. I volunteered to be a part of this committee because I had no predetermined conclusion about it. My opinion personally evolved over the course of all of these different meetings and forums that we held. And I think that our committee actually was a microcosm of the town as a whole. It was a challenge to get to consensus on this set of recommendations. The people on our committee held different viewpoints that reflect what we heard from the town at large. So I will walk through what our recommendations were and the reasoning behind those recommendations. We recommend retaining 2 of the parcels, those being parcels 4 and 5, as a permanent recreation area for the town of Enfield. We felt that parcels 4 and 5 had the most recreational value to offer to the town. And I think in general, when people think of the Johnston Drive property and accessing the Johnston Drive property, they probably generally think of parcels 4 and 5. There are 2 other parcels on the property. Parcel number 6 is a small triangular parcel. And parcel number 3 is a more wooded parcel that is home to a cabin under a lease encumbrance right now. We recommend selling parcel number 6 at fair market value. And we recommend that the town consider selling parcel number 3 upon the conclusion of its current lease encumbrance. So essentially, you have the potential to sell both parcels 3 and 6 to generate revenue and help offset the costs of maintaining 4 and 5 as a recreational area in the future. As it relates to what we would envision the use of parcels 4 and 5 to be, we envision the use to be a primarily walk, bike, and water access public recreational property with limited vehicular access. This was an area that we talked a lot about. And everybody recognizes the challenges related to that road and access that road provides. For that reason, we're recommending that the vehicular access be quite limited there. That vehicular access to the property be limited to public safety vehicles, property maintenance vehicles, and vehicles with disability plates and placards pursuant to State RSA 26188. The reason for that is we are recommending that a unpaved parking area sufficient for 3 handicap accessible vehicles be provided. And that is to ensure that the people in our community that have disability challenges related to mobility that can't otherwise access the property by foot, bicycle, or water have reasonable ability to access the property. I'm sure all of you as members of the select board understand the intentions of the Americans with Disability Act and why we strive to provide reasonable access to people. We don't want to be purposely exclusionary to anybody to access this property. We know that there's, I believe 14% of the town of Enfield's population, according to the census, identifies as having a disability of some sort. We want to make sure that that population has reasonable and fair access to this recreational property. As it relates to existing structures on parcels number 4 and 5, including the A-frame, we are recommending that those be demolished. We are recommending, based on our discussion with the Mascoma Lake Association, that interpretive and educational signage be erected on the property in conjunction with the Mascoma Lake Association related to lake flora and fauna as an educational item and instructing members of the public on responsible use of the lakefront property. A picnic table may be provided for use, or picnic tables potentially. It would be a wonderful picnic area. And if a picnic table or even a couple of picnic tables could be provided in the future, that would be, I think, a nice amenity for the property. This is along the rail trail, and we are encouraging primarily walk and bike access. And as part of encouraging walk and bike access, it makes all the sense in the world to consider putting a bicycle rack on the property so people can park their bike there when they access it. So we are recommending that as well for your consideration. We are not recommending any changes to the waterfront or anything along those lines. We are saying that swimming should occur at one's own risk and that signage should advise the public accordingly if they wish to swim on the property, that it is at their own risk. We are not recommending incurring the costs of putting refuse containers on the property. We are envisioning a pack in, pack out, leave no trace sort of concept. And nor are we recommending at this point putting a porta potty on the property. That said, our recommendation says that if the town staff determines that the public use of the property is sufficient to warrant the provision of a porta potty, then I would recommend that you do so based on the town staff's recommendation. But at this point, we are not recommending the provision of either refuse containers or a porta potty. We heard a number of comments from the public about different concerns about the property, that it may be underutilized, that there could be vandalism occurring at the property that causes environmental damage or damage to abutting properties. We do recommend, and that's our final paragraph in our recommendation, that you as the select board through town staff monitor the use of the parcels 4 and 5 in the future. And if you determine that the parcels are being either underutilized or maliciously utilized in a way that results in environmental harm, persistent vandalism, or damage to property, then you should reevaluate the recommendations that we are providing to you today. We did unanimously adopt these recommendations on June 22nd and recommend that they be forwarded to you. We as a committee have the power to be advisory. We are not elected officials. We are appointed members of a committee. You all are the decision makers as the select board. I would hope that you place a reasonable amount of deference on the process that we followed over the past 6 months to arrive at this recommendation. But the decision about what to do with the property in the future is ultimately yours. This is the best recommendation our committee could provide to you. And with that, I would invite any of the other members of the committee who are in attendance today, if there's anything I missed that you would like to clarify or speak to on from your perspective, I would encourage you to do so. But that is our recommendation to you. And I will say that it has been a pleasure working with the committee over the past 6 months. I thank all of them for their time commitment. It was a pleasure to tackle this tricky challenge and walk through this. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. And I thank you for appointing me and the members of the committee and for your level of confidence in us to develop a recommendation to you.
Thank you, Nate. Did any member of the committee want to make an addition? Okay, I'd like to flip back over just to Ed for a minute to add a little bit. Ed, as you know, was an ex officio member of this committee and very familiar with the process.
Yeah, I mainly just wanted to point out, we had this discussion at the select board before it even went to Johnson property, and I tried to really hold the line on, there's some right of way and deed restriction stuff in there and a lot of legal questions. So what I really pushed for was for the committee to listen to all this and put forward their best recommendation to the select board. And once we make a decision, we will be sending this to legal to make sure whatever we decide goes there. The reason that decision was pushed forward was I could have spent multiple tens of thousands of dollars on legal review. I would like to get this recommendation, send it to legal to give them some guidance and a lane to stay in to keep that burden down. So, there was a lot and it came up multiple times during the meetings of, well, we should just go legal review for this and this and this and this. And so I just wanted to re-explain why we didn't want to just throw that out there for every possible scenario. So, as we go through this, again, I think the select board should make some decisions on what the recommendation should be moving forward. And then we'll run that through legal review to make sure that everything is in line with what needs to happen.
Okay, with that, I'd like to start with the board and we'll just go down the table with questions or comments, either for Nate as the committee. Start with you, Eric.
Thank you. Really appreciate the work, everybody. I have some sense of how much time and effort it takes to take something like this on. I think you've really shown the value in taking a breath and talking to people and listening to people in town. So I don't have any specific questions. I've gotten good feedback on how the committee's been going. And I think it just shows that is this exactly what I would have done if it had been only my decision? No, but I'm fully supportive of what you guys have come up with. I think it's a good result from a good effort.
Thank you.
Alice, you want to wear both your hats?
As a member of the committee, I did think that it was a really robust process. And I think, you know, it could be something that we would rely on, like we're relying on it for Methodist Hill. We can rely on it in the future. I think, it's a really great way of bringing the whole community together around a situation that could potentially be divisive, and instead us coming together and growing from it. So I think it was really helpful in that way.
I also want to thank the committee. I think this is a very good job, very thorough indeed. The one question I do have is, because we may not have access to you and your group later, is to understand the thinking process of selling number 6.
Yeah, I think and members of the committee can chime in as they see fit. I think people saw the most recreational value in parcels 4 and 5. I also, it was repeatedly brought up that one of the abutting property owners has a right of first refusal to purchase parcel number 6. And so I think there was a recognition there that there may be a willing buyer there at fair market value for that property, and that parcels 4 and 5 held the most recreational value to the town.
So the driving force is economic then.
Economic, yeah.
Well, and I would also add that between 5 and 6, there's a natural barrier. So it really doesn't make sense to try to make that part of the park. It would be a cost to the town with very small benefit on the other side of that.
So in that balance of waterfront recreation versus economics and the concerns that we heard from people about, you know, the financial condition of the town and how to potentially leverage some of this property to offset some of those concerns, that was part of the reason why we arrived at that recommendation.
Thank you.
Obviously, a very thoughtful process, very balanced approach, and I think finally a balanced decision. I had a question about number 6 also. I think you explained that. So I'm very pleased with where we are with this right now.
I am also very pleased with the process. I think we've gotten a lot of good feedback from folks about the process while it was going on. And so I really appreciate the time and effort and the amount of thoughtfulness that went into considering who the stakeholders are, what their motivations may or may not be, because no matter how anyone feels, there's a little bit of truth in every piece, and it's parsing that out and picking the best possible compromise. And I think we know compromise doesn't make people all happy. Sometimes it makes them equally unhappy. I would not probably have chosen this, right? I'm kind of on the sell side of things. So, and I recognize there are operational issues and some pretty big feelings surrounding things. So I'm happy to support the committee in this. I think if something we were to find it was underutilized, then you've left some good recommendations and some good reasoning. On parcel 3, I think, do we have an indication of, and it's a lifetime lease, so, well, we know the other parcels have slowly come up, so, and parcel 3 is kind of also physically separate, has a little kind of stream.
For the most part, it crosses the stream a little bit, but that's something we can deal with a boundary line adjustment or something at the time of, but.
Okay, so that is kind of my thoughts. Would anyone else on the board like to ask any more questions? Or if not, I'm gonna open it up to the public in front of us. I want to remind everyone, for the benefit of your neighbors who might not know you, and for our minute taker, I would please ask you to say your first and last name. If you're not an Enfield resident, if you'd identify what your stake in the process is. So I will open it up. folks here, and then we'll go ahead and do the same thing with the folks online. Hey, go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name's Lisa Buck Rogers. I own 24 US Route 4. I'm one of the abutters in your proposed beach. Yeah, I have never been contacted by this town on your intentions, and I don't really understand why. There's a big issue with the right of way. We're already experiencing difficulties with cars parking down there, blocking the road, leaving trash, urinating, toilet paper, yet you're not gonna put garbage cans. You're not gonna put a bathroom. You're just gonna welcome more and more people to trash our environment. Who's going to police the road when cars park down there and block it? Who's going to take care of that? Who's gonna take care of accidents on our property? Who's gonna take care of the liability? We own the road. We're responsible for it. You're gonna invite public transportation down to the beach. And this is a big issue for me. I do have no intentions of opening up my liability for a town beach.
Lisa, could you tell us, where are you located in terms of?
I'm right on the border. I'm on one side of the road. Barbara Jones, Barbara Rule are on the other side of the road.
So you have the parcel that wraps around underneath the Butlers, is that?
Yes,
Okay.
they've been caught parking in his driveway. Who's going to police this? It's already a mess.
I'm not aware of complaints of.
Because
the Butlers.
nobody has asked, and I haven't even been invited to these meetings. And we're seeing a huge amount of traffic already.
Chief Holland is here. Can you speak to any complaint calls you have from abutters?
We've had probably in the last weeks, probably about 12 complaints regarding either parking or the road stuff. Be fair, majority of the parking complaints weren't, when the officers went down there and recorded it, they weren't blocking or anything. There's definitely been a misunderstanding amongst a bunch of people about what right of way is and what a private road actually is. And so we've definitely had to educate a lot of people on that itself. So it's definitely an ongoing process, continuing.
Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I am Barbara Rule. I also live on Johnston Drive and therefore I'm able to and butter. And I just want to say that there is some misunderstanding about the right of way and where it is. And also that this lot 3 that you're already assuming you'll absorb through when the passing of this person happens and they're elderly. But the people are still there using that property. And they have come up and knocked on my door and said, because people are allowed to, there are signs and I think, first of all, thank you for the signs. Thank you, everybody, for putting the committee together. And I love the net on what you're talking about. The plan sounds great. But currently, there's some issues with your signs that says no automobiles past this point. So they're parking right up against the signs. All on, and at the end of the rail trail, but once you cross the rail trail, if you turn right, there is an easement that is for the Tangway property on the other side of that brook. So they have always been able to access their property by turning right and parking at the pedestrian bridge. But now, because of the signs, all the people are parking there and you can't have access to it. I don't know if that's something that is understood by the police department, that there's an easement there. It doesn't show up on any town maps. So they have a right to access their summer camp there. And they're just having a hard time doing it in the current situation with the signs as they are now. Which sounds like if you go to, your legal with the plan that Nate Miller put together, which sounds excellent, perhaps this issue will go away. But I think, those that are looking at legal should take a look at this and make sure they understand and do a historical record of the easement to those properties and the right of way that is in the deeds for, people along Johnson Drive like myself, that we have it's not one of the town lots, it's actually right in the middle or to the right of way is right between lots 3 and 4, and it is clearly described as an ROW. If somebody buys that land, which they don't, they're gonna absorb it. It's still, we still have that right of way no matter what you do to it. So,
Your right of way is on lot 4.
yeah, so, but it is a right of way.
Right, and right of way
Goes
means you
with
need
the
to be
land.
able to pass over it.
It goes. with-
Yeah.
Thank you. I just wanted to
Thank you.
point that out, that there was some complaints about.
Yep.
That those owners.
Yeah, and I think this goes
Property.
back to what Chief is saying. There's a definite misunderstanding about right of way. You know, it's not a highway, it's a lane in and out when, and X number of feet. And so
Mhm.
right now, we know they've had some complaints. Sometimes there's a matter of, I want to turn here and I wish this was open versus this legally has to be open to me. So,
Well, and then that's the other thing, does it legally have to be owned, when it's a private drive? And the land is owned not by the town, but by private citizens, so that's another thing that your legal.
Well,
Address.
right, that's your assertion. The town owns property and has access to the right of way, same way you do.
Well, sure, I guess that,
That does not equal
But that doesn't
public
mean-
transportation.
right,
Right of way is for a specific purpose and means.
yeah.
Not
Historical
public
record.
transportation.
And we're not gonna resolve that tonight, and we're not gonna dig into this as Ed explained. It's gonna go out to legal. We're not gonna take legal opinions from non-lawyers in this meeting. You're certainly entitled to your opinion and to voice it, but we're not gonna belabor it. We're gonna send it out to council because that's what we pay them for. So, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm Lloyd McCutcheon from Enfield. I have a couple, comments I'd like to make, but before I make it, obviously you have received a proposal, very in-depth proposal tonight. When is the Board of Selectmen going to act on this proposal? If you're gonna act at a later time, I will save my comments till then. But if this is gonna be the hearing and then after this hearing, somewhere in the future, without any public notice or any further discussion on it, you're gonna make a decision for the town, then I'd like to, make a couple of comments.
I
Right.
would recommend with something this big that we actually do a public hearing
Yeah.
before we make it.
I agree. So we don't have to have a public hearing in the sense that we already own it and it's an open parcel, but I think in good faith and, to improve communication with everybody, it would make sense to do a public hearing. Are you all in favor of
Absolutely.
doing that? Okay, so does that help you?
Well, one of the major one that I want to talk about, I'll wait till that, but, I would like to speak to and I'm not a lawyer. And I know that, when I asked the town manager about the right of way down to this property, this was back in, June. I went and got copies of the deed. Again, I'm not an attorney. I reviewed them and I asked the town manager, he said it was confusing. They weren't gonna do anything about looking into the right of way to this property that the town owns, until there's a decision made on what to do. So I guess my thing is, if you can't have legal access to that property, then, I don't think you'd want to make a step beyond that until you find out what your legal standing is a right of way. Now, as Lisa said, right of ways are generally granted to individual places. It's not granted to the entire public. So if I have a piece of land and you have a piece of property and I give you a right of way to cross over that, that doesn't mean that the whole upper valley has a right to go across that. And the right of way, as I have researched it, it's not specific about anything in detail. It speaks in generality. So, in hearing all these problems that are already occurring down there, I would encourage you, before any action is taken, to get a clear understanding of what that right of way is, what you can do, what you can't do, and who has legal access to it. That's just a suggestion.
Yep, and I think that's what Ed was stating. If the board is, indicating, I would say even general support going into this, we could ask the town manager's office to go ahead and do that. And I think that's something that we should probably talk about tonight is going forward with a legal opinion so that we could go into a public hearing with that information. Dave?
Although I was not a member of the committee, I attended all the meetings, and you guys heard plenty of my opinions. I echo the process was excellent. However, I disagree with the sale of the property across the Little Creek. I think that should be retained as well. The one-time income for sale of that is not going to substantially change the tax base and or the tax for 1 year, and the tax base is not going to be substantially improved by the sale on an ongoing basis. Secondly, I echo the concerns about the right of way and whether the difference between the town as a municipality having access as a right of way and the general public, including members that we open it up to the public that are not even residents of Enfield, unless we were to do a really forceful enforcement, which I don't think would be feasible. I mean, 12 in the past week, that's how many assaults did you have in the past week?
No, it's not 12. There are some big feelings surrounding the property and they are getting calls. So I'll let Chief explain it.
Yeah, some of the calls have been regarding the use of the road, because some people consider it a private road. And it is a private road, but there's New Hampshire's definition of what a private road is. That doesn't mean it's close to the public. And there's complaints about people using that, Then there's been other complaints about parking, and then there's been complaints about, crash and stuff like that. So it's a litany of all kinds of different complaints regarding this property. So, and this kind of, everybody's focusing on a 30-foot right of way, and we're talking about 120-foot frontage. Everybody's focusing on 30 feet. Another 120 feet there. There's a 30-foot right of way coming in, and then there's another 30-foot right of way going down to the
30 feet by a couple, like eighth of a mile, quarter mile measure. That's not, it's a linear, I don't know what the total acreage would be.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wondering what led the committee to come to the decision to only, restrict it to three ADA compliant parking spaces versus open it to the general public. And the reason I'm asking is that if we're gonna open it to 3 ADA compliant parking spaces, we're gonna have to do our part as part of the road, right? We're gonna have to do our part to shore up the road some so that ADA people can get in and out. And an ADA compliant parking space is gonna require a fair amount of work and stuff like that. So we're still talking about potentially improving the road to some degree and put working into these 3 parking spaces. So I'm just kind of for clarification, why, if we're gonna put all that effort into that, why not put 12 or 14 parking spots and open it to the general public?
So the thought process behind that discussion was, number one, I think members of the committee were understanding of the concerns of the abutters about vehicular access to the property and the disruption caused by that. I think there were concerns about the geometrics of the intersection of that road with Route 4, the amount of traffic there, the safety concerns of lots of traffic coming in and out of that at the skew angle that it's currently at. And so the 3 spaces was a compromise to provide some level of access for people that truly have mobility challenges, but otherwise with the goal in mind of having primarily walk, bike, and water access to the property. So it was a compromise, and a compromise under the intention of respecting the feedback that we heard about the safety of the intersection and the concerns about substantial traffic on that road.
I'm sort of recollecting that in the past, the town of Enfield's had some issues with the, boat launching area to the point where we had to pave it and stripe it so that things would hold up in court. Is that?
So, yeah, you're absolutely hitting kind of the nail on my head of asking about that. So, you know, for the 20+ years I've been on the department, we spend a significant amount of time in the summertime and, you know, helping to enforce our upper beach, lower beach parking lot. And so this, here, and I was, and I'm not one of those people that walk in and wasn't part of a committee and then all of a sudden, like, you know, oh, your plan's horrible. But my immediate reaction to this is, it's quite frankly, almost unenforceable for our PD, to manage a three ADA compliant, you know, we're gonna be there significantly more than we're probably already there in the last 2 to 3 weeks, plus, you know, on top of our Skoma Beach parking stuff that we already have. I can see it becoming the same issue. And I can tell you right away that an ADA parking spot is non-enforceable unless it's ADA compliant, which means it has to be marked at a specific height. And then it also has to be permanently marked on the ground. It has to have so many feet. So and that's, you know, I can attest to that personally from being in the court and having the judge say, I understand you wrote this ticket, but no. So it's not enforceable unless it meets very specific criteria.
I just had a quick question for you overall in terms of, approach. I wondered if anybody considered selling it like to a developer and doing it as a request for proposal so that you required a pocket park and putting it so that it's in private use with a required pocket park as an easement rather than, is that anything you guys
We
discussed?
met with town staff to determine what the realistic development potential of the property was, if we were to go down that path and determine that the realistic development potential of the property under the town's regulations as they exist today and the shoreland regulations as they exist today is one house. And we didn't want to assume anything development wise that would run contrary to what's in the town's existing regulations. So what is the development potential of this property as the entire town-owned property is one house?
No, I think that's an important piece of information. I'm gonna pass over you, Dwight, because you've already spoken. I'll come back to you, but Dan has his hand up. Dan
Yeah,
Kiley?
I guess I like the proposal. The only issue I have, I think it's the same one the chief has. What I see is, I don't have a handicap placard. But I'm not walking from the Lakeside Park to get there. So I'm gonna park on Route 4 and walk down. And I think people with young families are probably gonna do the same thing. They're gonna park on Route 4 and walk down. And I think that could be an issue that you may not want to have. Because as long as they're in the public right of way and there's no parking signs, I don't think there's anything you can do about it.
Yeah. I mean, and right now, we couldn't put up any no parking signs. The only folks who would be authorized to do so and would have ones that are enforceable would be the state of New Hampshire.
Right.
Because that's a state road.
Or a person that owns that land, which is me,
No,
No,
you can't, you
I'm
don't,
talking in the public right
in
of
the
way,
public right of way, you,
it's 20 feet from.
from the center of the road to the
Yeah.
floor raw.
Yeah.
So you could have parallel parking
parking,
in the bike lane per se, or on the white line.
which is the con-
Currently what we deal with on Route 4A.
Right,
Exactly.
exactly. At the
with the
Chicago line.
boats and the,
Right.
Yep.
Right.
and that's
Yeah.
a state road as well, so we're familiar with the
I
challenge.
don't think you want young families getting out of their cars on Route 4, walking down there.
Craig?
Thank you. Back when this was first being moved, I remember speaking to the committee right here in this room. And among other things, I mentioned that in order to control public access by vehicle, it is necessary to have a gate across that driveway that is where the keys to the lock are given to the butters and held by the town for its purposes. And for the fact that it is in fact a landowner down there with the same rights as any of the other butters. What I have not heard in the committee's recommendation or anywhere else is any consideration of a gate that can be locked that is going to a great deal resolve this vehicle access and trash and parking problem. Has anyone ever addressed that? Gate.
Yeah,
So I can add,
Chief.
so I can actually add on it, that's, and then again, we're going to nail on the head of that, is, and so the Hampshire Supreme Court has ruled that, any road that is open to the public that's been traveled on for more than 20 years is considered what the state calls a way. And so whether it's privately owned, privately owned by multiple owners, it's not, it is open to the public unless it is gated. And so unless the town, being one of the owners, and all the other owners chipped in and put a gate in there and provided a key code, whatever it's that, we cannot control who drives down and up that road. So the traffic concern that some people have won't be solved by putting just a couple handicap, by saying, us putting a town ordinance, will say, that says you can park only there, but which they can be ticketed for town ordinance for parking, but we can't control them driving up and down that road. That's by New Hampshire Supreme Court.
We've got some hands up online. I'd like to give them an opportunity since they haven't. Looks like number one, Daniel, will recognize you. If you could give your full name and if you're not from Enfield, let us know where you're from and what your interest is in the parcel.
Okay, yeah, Daniel Amaro, and the lot over in Lebanon has been in my family for close to 80 years.
Daniel, are you the property owner?
No, it's my mother. And is that okay? She's here too. If I need consent from her for you to listen to me, I can get
I
consent.
mean, I'm happy to listen to you, but your mother would be the one who has standing.
Right, I understand that. And she's can reiterate everything I say. I've spoken to her for hours on end on our vacation. And yeah, this is good. I mean, I'm kind of disrespected that our driveway was completely blocked. And Chief, your officer came out there and stood there with his hands in his pockets. And I was like, well, you're going to go find the people who are driving this car? Because we are blocked. And look, like, you're smiling right now. This is funny. But if we are legally blocked
I'm gonna
in.
pause you
and
for
we
a
call-
second. You're gonna be respectful in this meeting and we are not going to pick on people about smiling or facial expressions. We're just going to stick to facts and comments.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am. Sorry about that. Yes, ma'am.
Output.
Sorry. So anyway, we were completely blocked in. God forbid, had we had an emergency, we would not have been able to get 911 down there, emergency services who are supposed to be able to get down there. My main complaint was that there's no proper signage to tell people what to do. Okay, so I love for everyone to be able to enjoy the beach, but you opened up a parking lot when there wasn't one yet. You know, I mean, yeah, public right of way, but we also have a right of way that can't be blocked. And it's really disrespectful that we were completely blocked in. And then your chief is sitting here saying that that the 3 times you guys came out was not justified. The officer kind of guilt tripped me, said, oh, I could have pulled someone over speeding, but it's like, this is there's an issue here. I got yelled at by somebody for saying it's not a parking lot yet. And then my hands are off. So now I'm just calling the cops every time. And, it's, I can go on, but, and the trash, I picked up a few bags of trash while I was there as well. And the Michael, whatever it is, the officer who was there saw me pick up some trash. And I showed him the trash I was picking up, and some of them looked like drug bags. And I showed it in his face. I was like, look at this. And is that documented? I don't know. It seems like you guys are just blowing off the complaints. 12 complaints on one road seems like a lot to me. And that's all. It's just really frustrating. And I hope you understand my frustrations. And sorry if it's come at certain people the wrong way, but it's just really hard when we are blocked in and people walk to the rope swing from this not even really parking lot yet. And it's not permitted parking lot. And public is parking down there, which if there was a parking lot, I wouldn't care. But they're parking in grass or parking around the tree. Mainly, one person parked right on the rail trail, and luckily she was there with us. She was down at the beach, and we found her. But and if there's an emergency, like, who knows what would happen? And then just the fact that nobody knows, it's left for us to kind of deal with. And it wasn't a great vacation for me. So I just wanted things to be handled a little better, and they weren't at the time. So thank you, the committee. I like the committee's recommendation. It sounds really good. And thank you for all the work the committee put into it. I'm not sure that my mother had heard from the committee, but you know, that's all I got for you guys. So thank you very much.
Does your mother want to say anything?
Oh, well, she's Nancy Tangway. She'll have to raise her hand. She's at her house.
Well, okay, I thought you said she was with you. I'm sorry. You meant online, not physically proximate. Gotcha.
She's with us virtually, yeah.
Ah, excellent. Okay, so if she puts her hand up, we will acknowledge her. Thank you very much, Danielle.
Thank you.
Okay, hang on. You're gonna wait until I do Barbara Jones, okay? Barbara, go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Hi, I'll reiterate, I think the committee's recommendation is appropriate, except for lot 3, which could be it doesn't matter. That's not what I want to talk about. I completely back up everything Daniel just said. If the town, and it is on the town, would bother to produce signage that tells people where to park, what to do. I don't mind people coming and parking there. We've gone for decades with people driving down and parking in toward that split rail fence, and it's been fine. We have 5 seconds of summer. Let these people enjoy it. Let the families come down with their kids and unload right there, and that's finer than fine. But with no signage, you have produced, by opening up this bag of worms, the town has produced a situation where there's chaos. There is absolutely no reason for you not to have directional signs. It's really not a big lift. And to make the homeowners and the abutters spend money on signs like Lisa had to do is ridiculous. You need to step up and put proper signage there. Thanks.
Thank you, Barbara. I'll go ahead and.
Thank you, Barbara Rule again. Just back to Daniel Amato, the Lebanon abutter. So if we're talking about all the lots that Enfield owns, and then there's lot 3 that Enfield will own or whatever. But there are 2 other lots that also need that right of way across the rail trail and to the right to get to their Lebanon lots. And I don't know if anyone's considering the fact that there are 2 other camps over there, as well as the Enfield one that you have your sights on, where people are actually coming. This is where they've come for years and years and years for their summer vacation, and they're being blacked out for the purpose of this public access. So I'm just saying that you've forgotten about those people.
I don't,
talk about.
did anybody not know there was Lebanon homes? You didn't know there were Lebanon?
I didn't.
Okay,
know.
I think the board has certainly talked about it. I know Johnson,
Well, the town doesn't, because there are people parking in their easement to their place. People, I'm not.
that's your, yeah, I was to say, that's
I'm
your,
not saying you, I'm saying town.
right. I think our folks do. My understanding is unless, she can, have you had anyone who is completely blocking the right of way yet?
Not when we've been down.
Okay,
Not when we've been.
so, and it's,
I'll be happy to share with the board, my officer took pictures and stuff like that of what the reported blockings and stuff. And again, I'm not saying that they weren't at times, because we have to prioritize calls.
Right.
Summer is very busy, so we can't always be there right away. The times that my officers had to go down, from once I've talked to them, nobody was completely blocked in. Some people weren't able to park where they wanted to park, or, be able to park where they normally park, but nobody has been completely blocked in. There's been some misunderstandings about the 30-foot right of way that, people can't park anywhere in that 30-foot right of way and stuff like that. I'll share with the board the pictures that they took of the cars that go park down there, and you can make a determination on your own.
is that something that you feel would be helpful visually for you? Okay, yeah, that would be great. You can send them and they can be.
I'll send them to the town manager and he can
Wonderful, that would be helpful, and I think, obviously, as part of moving forward, no matter what everyone decides, this feedback is all very helpful because we have experience in delineating expectations in other parking areas. I would cite Mascoma Lakeside Park, where it's a non-vehicular boat launch, right? And that is very clearly delineated, so I think we can make some solid choices about how to guide people, but we probably aren't gonna invest thousands of dollars in signage until we have a decision. That's why the temporary signage, and the goal there was really to preserve the lake because there were folks driving all the way down, which I think we can all agree is not an acceptable form of use. It's not safe for the lake or property owners. So, okay, Nancy, I can see your hand up. Nancy, when you have, if you would unmute.
Can you hear me now?
We
Yes,
can.
okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I apologize a little bit for my son. He's taken this very personally, and it's a very special piece of property. I want to thank the select board and everybody else for this long and probably arduous process. I can't say any more. I want to protect my right of way, and I want to protect my property, and I also want to protect the property for the trash people who are right next door on the Little White Camp. I think he has had some difficulties getting down there because of cars parked, and he's 97, needs a wheelchair, so they had to ramble around a car or two to get him across the walk bridge. That's all I'm going to say. Again, thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Yes.
And then we have Barbara Jones. Barbara, go ahead and unmute, please.
Kate, today we called the police because for hours there was a car right at the rail trail blocking all access to all those places. This would happen no matter what. Signage makes all the difference in the world. People don't do things like that on purpose. They do it because there's no guidance, and it's not thousands of dollars worth of signage. It really is not. That's what I do for a living. This would not cost a lot of money. Anyway, I could go on because anyway, I'm muting myself.
Okay. Go ahead, Nancy.
Nancy Smith, I was on the committee, and I spend an awful lot of time talking about a lot of the stuff, but I'm not sure that we asked what it was like last year. I don't recall talking about what it had been until. What was the traffic like last year? Someone tell me.
We didn't have any issues last year. It's been recently, since it's been advertised about Johnston's Beach. It's on Google's maps now. I got people from Vermont and out-of-staters going down there. We didn't have an issue until recently. On Google Maps.
Thank you.
Dave.
We bike there regularly. This is the first year that we've ever seen anybody there.
Are there any, is that Barbara with her hand up again or not down in the last?
It's,
okay.
I have my hand up again.
Okay.
So it's not a bad thing that all these people come because obviously you want it to be utilized. It's really not a bad thing. And we've had an uptick ever since as somebody said, Lisa, we've had an uptick in people coming. And I truly think that it's a good thing. I mean, it's a nice space for people to enjoy, but they have to know. They simply have to know where to go. And by the way, those signs that Ed put up it's the Supreme Court just said that you cannot enforce that law of going closer than 50 feet. That's not enforceable, and it's not a law. It's not an EPLA law. It's just something that has created chaos down there. Those signs need to leave and people need to be pointed to where the parking is. That's all. It's not complicated.
I'm sorry, are you asking to give vehicular access all the way to the water?
I'm saying those signs need to be removed and people need, because they're, as Dan said, they're parking right by the sign, so they're blocking
yeah.
the bottle. So why not just point them into the split rail fence and call it a day? We've done it for years. I let people park on my property because I have property down there. People kindly and ask if they can park there. I appreciate their asking. It's really not a big deal. And people need to be enjoying that lake, not incurring the expense of a ticket because they don't know what they're doing. Give them direction. It's extremely annoying because in the end of the day, it's on the town.
And I don't think anybody's disputing whether or not it's really knowing what the path forward is so that we can take appropriate action in a way that is a good compromise for everyone. So I think it's all very good feedback. And certainly something we can look at, unless there's another new comments from the folks either here in front of us or online. I'd like to go back to the board and see what the board's pleasure is moving forward. Are there any new comments?
Yes,
Okay.
I guess after hearing everybody, I'm a little confused because from Route 4 down to the rail trail, I acquired this from the town. My tax assessor drew that was kind of, this is a plot, this is the, shows the right of way. It's only 20 feet. So when you leave Route 4 and you get to the rail trail, there's only 20 feet. Anything outside of that 20 feet is privately owned property. All of it. So when you get to the rail trail, then it crosses over the rail trail is to access the land. Then there's a 30-foot right of way that goes at 100 feet, 30 feet wide down to the lake. But from Route 4 to the rail trail, I can't see why this, you know, it should be a, they marked that 20-foot right of way. There's only 20 feet. It's not 50 feet. You can't park on somebody else's property because it doesn't belong to them. So the right of way is 20 feet. So any cars that are parking from Route 4 to that rail trail are on private property and they'd have to have their own land on the beach.
Yeah, I don't think that,
No, they were talking about parking along Route 4, not on the.
But I thought somebody said they were parking down below too.
They are parking down below. They're parking down below all the time.
So the only thing the town has control over is 20 feet. And the landowners have full control of the rest of that. I think that's an important factor. Yes, I would add, now that Pandora's box has been opened, for good, bad, or indifferent. I think the town has got an issue that you need to address for the people that live down.
I mean, I think just to speak for myself, I live on a public way. Anybody can come park in front of your house. They really shouldn't block your driveway, but if they're in the public right of way, there's not a lot you can do.
No, that's what I said, but
Yeah.
it's 20 feet.
No, and so that's not in the public right of way, right? So that's the landowners. They can post it or do whatever they want on their property and certainly, obviously, Chief has been supportive of going down and sending resources. So I don't think you have an issue sending resources other than we don't have an unlimited number of police officers to patrol parking every day.
Yeah, those are all the things that we'll be talking about with legal counsel.
Yeah, so, and I don't think any of the conversations aren't going to be had. It's more knowing what the board, the sense of the board, like, do we want to go to legal counsel? So if are there any new points or topics that the public wants to bring up? So I'll come back to the board. What's your pleasure? Are you, and I'm not asking straw poll even, but are you generally supportive of taking a look at this in a public hearing? And if so, are you willing to support expending some funds to go to legal?
Yes.
Yes to both of those.
Yeah.
I would like us to pull together our requests for legal and have that prepared before the public hearing. I'd like each member of the board who has listened intensely tonight, and this has been terrific, thank you, to send you questions that we may have as a board so that you can distill them into the directive for some legal attention.
And I'm sure you have a list already.
And I'm sure you have your own list as well.
Great.
Yeah.
No, I have some. already.
So ours may indeed be repetitive, but distilling it into the process for the attorneys, based on what we heard tonight, sound like the next best step. And once we know we have that, we should then proceed with a public meeting.
Do we want to look at an August date? Is it too soon to,
Let me talk to legal,
Okay.
because we want to get that back from legal.
how long? See what their timeline is like? Okay. But looking at either August
But I
or the fall.
Any questions that you guys bring, I will work with legal on the proposed recommendation and the right of way. And
Just a point of your information, will those questions be shared with the public?
which one?
The public.
I think the legal
Question.
responses
Questions they
should
can
be.
do legal.
I think the legal responses certainly will be, but the conglomeration may be distended in a way that it needs to be distilled by the town manager to be a proper legal proposal.
We regularly have conversations individually with Ed in which we say, are you hitting X, Y, and Z point? They may not be the actual questions going forward to legal. So Ed is gonna aggregate all of the points into something that is concise and hopefully won't cost us a zillion extra dollars.
But if that happens from all of you, doesn't that constitute a meeting?
No, it
That's not-
constitutes a
not
meeting if we
warrant?
email each other. We have individual conversations with Ed. That is not a meeting when we have an individual conversation.
I think it behooves you to share those questions with the public before they go to legal and save yourself some
Anything
money.
that we can do to help the butters at this point, because they have a problem. I think that y'all need to try to see if there's something.
Yeah, so that's the second piece is that, so the next piece in terms of the big process is figure out legal questions and have a public hearing. But is there a path in parallel to deal with some of the parking and?
Yeah, we can definitely look at that and stay in contact with the
Yeah,
police department.
that's a-
We need to move those signs back.
That's a
little bit.
short-term
We
issue.
can do that.
In addition to being a long-term
They,
question.
that's fine.
There's signage and so just.
We'll look
leave
for
it-
that. We just can't make full-on permanent signage until we know what we're gonna do. That's, but we can do
Well,
some direction if there
So
needs to be. some
there's
direction.
temporary signage, right? Like the chloroplast, the corrugated plastic signs that we use, that are temporary. And then there's permanent signage, which we use in this town, which is the sheet metal, right? And that's more expensive. So before we go investing in sheet metal and whatever kind of rocks or pavers or whatever we're gonna do to make a little happy line, we're gonna make some bigger decisions. But for now, they can revisit the temporary signage. And they've done a good job trying to do that now. So we'll leave that with operations to work on. Go ahead, Barbara. Online, Barbara, sorry, Barbara Jones.
I just need someone to say to me in words that no one has ever talked to legal about this until this moment. You've had 6 or 7 months to discuss this. Seems to me that the first discussion I had with Ed Morris was that he was going to consult legal about the right of way of this road. Because he said they owned the right of way and they could do whatever they want. That was his statement. And the next step was going to be to go to legal. So look in your notes and make darn sure that you haven't already consulted legal. I know that Barbara Rule and I certainly have consulted lawyers. I mean, I have talked to the lawyers. There is no doubt about our right of way to the beach. There's no doubt about your right of way here. So I don't know what you're talking about, but you need to. I find it hard to believe that you haven't talked to legal through this entire process. I'm shocked.
So Ed did start out the beginning of the meeting explaining why we didn't go to legal, because there are different ramifications of how you frame your questions to legal based on what approach you're gonna take. So sales versus keep versus parse out versus maybe go to the planning board and do a boundary line. So those pieces were all in play we have to be cognizant of tax dollars, and so Ed is gonna go to legal now. We're gonna take that information based on the recommendations that this committee has made and give them a scenario of this is what we would like to do and have legal give an opinion in that parameter, right? Rather than saying, hey, we're gonna sell it to a developer, what can they do? Does that help?
No.
Okay. Perfect. Moving on. Do we have anything further?
Yes.
Okay, John.
The more I think about it, the more I wonder, I'd like an analysis really of if we were to sell parcel 3, what would we be likely to gain from that? And what impact would that really have upon the tax rate?
There'd be little to no impact.
Little to none. And you know, I've never gotten over,
Oh, yeah.
the head of the lake,
Mhm.
when the hotel went belly up,
We
it was
should've-
torn down. What, half that end of the lake practically
Yeah.
was offered to the town of Enfield at a reasonable price.
I think our discussion more on that one was a little bit more thinking about the neighbor on the other side and.
No, I'm talking about the
Infiltrate.
end of the lake.
Yeah, no, I'm
Before
talking
your
about
time.
parcel 3.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That people crossing that footbridge into almost their lawn to be part of a public park. We thought would be cumbersome for them and not a big thing. And that cabin is functional. People are in it now. So it was a piece of property that could actually be sold and used by the public and would create that natural barrier from it being a public park in your backyard, if you will. I mean, I know there's a lot of abutters there and it's something we're dealing with anyway, but that one seemed a little bit more intrusive than some other.
But we're not gonna get many opportunities to gain more lake property.
Yeah.
No.
I hate to see that one go to waste. Thank you.
That'll be a decision to make when that comes up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, we can't bind a future board, but we can take it into consideration. So I think it's there on the table with a recommendation and we certainly, John's gonna be there still guiding us because he has all of our history. Don't you think you're going anywhere? Our board historian. No, it's a very good point, though. We really did lose. I think a lot of us know that we lost a significant opportunity for a very good, probably potentially safer parcel with good access and so regrets are also something to consider. So you'll get us information on timeline from legal and potential scheduling of public hearing. So folks, when public hearings are scheduled, they are publicly announced, so they are on our webpage. They are shot out into social media. They are, if you're signed up for our announcements, they're in our announcements, and they're also in the town news. So if you have a particular interest and you feel like you've not gotten those pieces of information, make sure you get your email address or your phone or whatever it needs to be to Ed and Elisa. But Barbara?
I just want to say thank you, Ed, for saying that about the neighbors down there in Lebanon who abut the property number 3. I think it's what we need to pay attention to is other people's right to private enjoyment on their property. And secondly, when you say, oh, you missed the opportunity to own this or that, okay, to what end? Back to the other end of the lake where the hotel was sold and torn down. That is now part of like the Shakoma Beach, not Shakoma, but the Mascoma Heights Association. So that beach benefits the homes up
No,
there.
has no connection
you're
with
not on the
that.
same- You're not on the same parcel.
They
No.
have the beach area though.
No, you're not on the same parcel.
Well, it's, okay, so
They have that very tiny little piece there.
association.
No, the association is a narrow lane. There are a series of private homes.
Right. So you probably get a good tax basis from that.
Yeah, but, and then that's definitely
Not a
something.
loss then to you.
So what are you looking
I don't,
from us right now?
consensus, you don't need a motion.
You need a motion?
Not really, as long
consensus?
as we have consensus that this is the recommendation that we're gonna talk to legal about.
Yes.
Like I said in the beginning, if we went saying we're gonna open it up for full parking and all this stuff, it's a lot different conversation than a couple cars here and there. And so I just wanted to give the attorney some guidance. And then like Kate said, if we were gonna sell it, it's a whole different conversation with the attorney. So I didn't want to spend tens of thousands of dollars of taxpayer money when I can go spend $1,000 of taxpayer money because it's illegal.
I missed, it looks like I missed Shirley. I apologize. You want to unmute Shirley?
I just wanted to say, they're not making any more lake property. And are there any other pieces that Enfield owns on the lake, on the shore? I doubt that we'll ever get the opportunity to have another piece of land on it. People are hanging on to their property.
Thank you, Shirley.
That's all to say.
Thank you. So I'd like to continue on the business of the evening, and you guys are welcome to stay. We love having you here. We are moving on to Trail Master volunteer appointment. Thank you, Nate.
Are you welcome?
What do you want to sign up for next? We'll get you a form.
I actually, on Thursday night, I'm like, oh, I've got to go to the JPUC meeting. There's no more JPUC meeting. It's ingrained in my.
Oh. Conservation Commission. Hang out with me. Okay. Awesome. Right. We have, and we're gonna have Ed tee it up since you had the initial conversation. Oh, you're gonna throw it over the, I'm gonna throw it back to me. So, in the past, there's been discussions both on conservation and with the select board about trail master paid position. And there's been a variety of conversations. I'm just gonna throw it out there as a blanket statement instead of recapping all of them. The Conservation Commission has actively decided that they would like to pursue maintaining our trails, operating them, fixing them. Craig has done some pretty extensive work looking at them and has experience. Dr. Tights, do you want to come up too?
Well, I thought that Sanborn was the volunteer.
Well, he is, but you're a member, you're the chair of the committee that's proposing it, and so I think you both have had a conversation about what needs to be done in terms of volunteer forms. That's kind of where I left it.
Yeah, we looked at that and this volunteer form came forward and we thought it was best to bring this back to the select board to talk about the creation of this position and the appointment of the select one deems. It's something that they would like to appoint from the town.
And the only thing left blank is the term.
Yeah.
So when we'll start and.
That's a good one.
You have a lot of experience doing that work.
40 years.
Yes. I can't imagine anyone more suited for this position.
Thank you for the kind words, and I do hope my performance will justify it.
Sure, well.
And I assume you wrote this up.
That is my report, yes.
Yeah, really detailed and knowledgeable, and what a lot of work that's going to involve. So do you see part of your role as not only working yourself, but getting other people involved?
I'm 72. I'm not going to be doing this terribly much longer, although I hope. But the purpose of my being a trail master here for the town is that we shall raise a team of volunteers and train them in the normal and customary tasks that trail crews do, so that when I have to hang up my shovel, they will be able to carry all of that.
Sounds like a good plan.
And the Conservation Commission has gone through, was in the newsletter, so there's a link online to a volunteer form, like a sign-up sheet. There's a volunteer form they would have to sign with the town separately to help support Craig's work, so he's not out there by himself. So I think Conservation has talked about doing some educational pieces, going to the markets, and Yeah.
Yeah, well, working with the Conservation Commission and what Mr. Sanborn brought forward, he brought forward a state form. We've always had a volunteer form, but he brought forward a state form that was like a one-day volunteer form, so we worked off of that, and Lisa created a form that we can use for insurance purposes, so we can do trail work days, those types of things, and they don't have to go through the full volunteer appointment process, but they can kind of sign the login sheet as a volunteer for the day. So that did come out of this process, and it would, hopefully it's a way to bring more volunteers in for work projects.
I would like to interject that that particular form is the one that is used by the New Hampshire Division of Parks and Recreation in the state parks. And that it is something that you get off their website, and that it has been reviewed and passed by the New Hampshire Attorney General. The same language is in the town form.
Minus one RSA, which is not a file.
Correct. RSA 216A3H is referring to the state parks only, and you don't want.
So not reinventing the wheel, I think it's been a good process. Does anybody have questions about any thoughts? Eric?
I think it's fantastic. Having a trail master makes a lot of sense, and having the opportunity to build a program to maintain our trails, right?
Hey, and in the meantime, I would like to point out that the most definite and possibly expensive need that I saw was the need of several new bridges, for which I go into some detail regarding two types of bridging, one which we call all PT, and the other type is the normal bog bridge. And depending on the span and loading and so forth, they are somewhat interchangeable. Generally, I should prefer to go with bog bridges where possible, because they are in fact cheaper and they're a lot less bought or imported stuff towed off to a site.
Just in terms of interfacing, so, I don't, with the Trail Master, I'm not clear in terms of where they fit in org chart. That's what I want to say. How, you know, and how we would support in terms of, say, we need to get a purchase order, right? Like, who would we offer for internal support in terms of making that kind of component?
Yeah, I think I can answer that.
Well, I was gonna say, I think the trail master can work with the conservation committee. If things are to be funded outside of their fund and want to go through the budgetary process.
Okay.
As long as they work with us and put it in the budget process prior to the budget going through, we can probably work with recreation to get it in their budget, but we can get it into a budget somewhere if we need to. And it's a conservation commission determines that they want to pay for it through their fund, they can do that.
And in terms of purchasing using, I'm assuming we have some town discounts in place in various locations.
We have some stuff, we have suppliers that we can work through, and we definitely can put some staffing forward to help some things out and figure.
It's Craig's, you know, donating his time and.
Our intention is to pay for the materials and make donations to the Trail Alliance through the Conservation's Fund, which will not require then any expenditure of taxpayers' money.
Well, it would be taxpayer dollars because it came from taxpayers in the first instance.
No, the Conservation Fund is a separate fund that is eligible to be spent by the Conservation Commission if you look at the RSAs associated with that.
Where does the money come from? It doesn't come from any tax
It
dollars?
comes from donations, but not from tax dollars.
Oh, I was gonna say, it comes from tax dollars. There's not.
Some does.
Okay, so some and some. So yeah, that's why I just want to make sure that we do our due diligence and, you know, and honor taxpayers. And also make sure we're getting, you know, support, you know, if we're gonna get, say, 10% discount using a town account at, I'm gonna pick La Valley's because we know who they are, or Canaan Hardware, wherever we go, I want to make sure that we're getting that opportunity in place. So it sounds like we can do that without a problem.
Yeah,
And
they
provide
can
them
do
that
that and
support.
it can work.
Okay.
me or other staff.
And then we can set them aside a location on town property for material storage if needed.
I've already looked at things of that with Mr. Taylor,
Okay,
and he said he had designated an area. Most of the wood that we use is going to be pressure treated, so it can be stored outdoors. And he is designating a place at the Department of Public Works for that purpose.
great.
At the moment, we haven't ordered anything because we haven't gotten this trail master
Right.
established.
Right. And so the goal is just to make sure that we have these pieces of support in place. So we have a delivery point, and so it sounds like we've got all of that together. Is that fair?
Yeah, and if there's anything else that comes up, we will definitely work with the Conservation Commission or Mr. Sanborn to do what we can do on the town side.
Just a point of information, what are you looking at for timing for, because I've been a volunteer, looked at with Greg and some of those. Things. What's the timing that you're looking to, do, somewhere along those big bridges?
I would say that the next thing we have to do is to go out there with a party of a few of us and remeasure the sites, decide what needs to be built on any particular site. And from there, we can generate a materials list. And from there, you generate a cost.
Unfortunately, couldn't get to Cole Pond this
What about
yesterday because of the weather, right?
Well,
But.
Coal Pond does not even apply to this.
Okay, but it seems like a lot of runoff is likely happening. Might be a good time to be looking for wet areas.
But can we,
Where they are.
discuss the details of this in the future? I move at this point that we accept Mr. Sanborn's application to be trail master of the town of Enfield.
Do we have a second?
What term would you like it to be?
We do 3-year like everything else, or?
So
What would you be comfortable with as a term? 2 or 3 years?
Well, let us start it out at 2 years and see how things work. I think that's the fairest thing to do.
Good. I amend my motion to include a 2-year term.
And you seconded?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, people.
The description on the books.
I appreciate the vote of confidence.
Good luck to you, sir.
Wonderful, and let's tell everyone you know, so we can get Craig some
All this together.
volunteers.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, acceptance of Shaker Boulevard, very important, Shaker Boulevard Bridge project.
So this is coming to you. We've talked to it about it a little bit before. Part of the bridge aid that came out through the state this year was divided up into projects that the state was going to be working on our behalf. When we learned a little bit more about this, working with the state, it's federal funding coming to the state. And then there is a portion of it that'll be due by the town, $33,008.66. Pretty cheap cost for a $1.2 million bridge almost. So, working on that, I've got the grant agreement that the state sent me. And part of that was to have authorization from the select board to accept this grant and move forward. And, I think an important part of this is if you're willing to accept this grant from the state, that you also authorize me permission to sign these forms and move over.
So question, so it's gonna be taken from CIP,
There's a recommendation of that. I think
Okay,
we have a little bit of time to talk about it
Okay.
coming through the next process, but it makes sense to come from there. I think I put the other place that it could possibly come from in the future is undesignated
There's
funds,
funds that can be looked at.
just depending on where.
so that will be the funding source. We know we have,
Sometime.
My question is the timing of the 33,000. Do we have the 4 years to accumulate that money? This is a 2027 project.
It really, I think we have until the project is underway and moving forward.
But we have almost 4 years then to accumulate $33,000.
It depends when the state decides to put the fund. It moves, so I don't want to say yes, we. do,
Yes,
But we have more than this budget year to figure out where that needs to come from.
so that the CIP could look at something if the funds were coming from that direction and actually program it over more than 1 year.
probably.
Yeah.
Not gonna
We'll leave
commit
that up to the CIP folks to make a recommendation, but we have adequate time for it to go through CIP.
We just had a state changing on this about 2 years, and we've also had them get pushed off for 12, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Good.
I heard the state had tons of extra money and
It's a great project, and for that price, it's terrific
yes.
opportunity.
we'll find the money.
Do we have a motion?
And we're gonna inherit a Bailey Bridge back.
I move to authorize town manager or their designee to accept state bridge aid and federal aid programs for the replacement of the Shaker Boulevard Bridge over the Knox River with a total estimated project cost of $1,179,836.79, consisting of a town match of $33,008.66. And hereby authorize town manager or their designees to take such action and execute all documents that may be necessary.
Do we have a second?
Second now.
Hi, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention passes unanimously.
Well, meet the estimate and figured out the 79 cents, you know?
I thought that was funny.
Okay, water and sewer connection request on Nancy's Way, and I managed to make a mess of my pocket, so.
Yeah, I'm totally lost.
We're just recommend.
Oh, there it is, okay. Right here. And you said Jim recommends this? Okay. Good. We just need a motion for us?
I don't think they have any choice. They've already broken ground and they're well into it. What are they gonna do? Put in a porta potty?
No, I mean, honestly, though, Nancy's Way is along the lake. I think anytime somebody wants to protect our watershed by connecting to water and sewer, we're advisable to do this, so.
You asked, someone recommends this? Who?
Jim Taylor,
Jim
that's,
Taylor. I
sorry.
thought you said
Elisa
Jen.
said it, but
Like, who's
no,
Jen?
no, and I know the, sound from the,
Jen.
Yeah.
I'm thankful for air conditioning, but I swear in one of my ears, it's not great. Do we have a motion to grant this request as printed?
I move that we accept the request for one water unit to 20 Nancy's Way as requested.
I'll second that.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions passes unanimously. Okay. Committee appointments. The first one up is CIP application from Jim Pickett. I believe, or James Pickett. And he had budget committee, which will go to budget committee, I'm assuming. Is that how that works? Okay. So it says budget committee and CIP, but budget will be voting on their sentiments separately. So this is just for CIP. Does anyone have any questions? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
Does anyone know Mr. Pickett?
He did attend, was at the public hearing on the budget and did run for budget committee and expressed interest. He is, owned property for a while, but a newer resident, so.
He's been, before the elections, he
Yeah.
came to the select board and talked to the select board, I believe, about budget committee and other things. He was.
He finished his house and moved into it?
Oh, yeah, he's been in for a while. I made off with the shaving on his house. Small town life, but no, he's interested in, he has a particular interest in data and communications and how we communicate with folks is what he'd expressed in the past. I don't want to put words into his mouth, but I think that was the general sentiment, was he was willing to learn and chip in.
I think it's great. What does Mr. Pickett do?
He has a LinkedIn profile.
He
I don't
says he has training in basic accounting and
Yeah, the accounting,
experience in data management.
Sure.
I've managed budgets of several $1 million in industry. I move that we accept his application.
I second.
Okay. Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions passes unanimously. Okay, then we have Energy Committee application from, I think that's Paul Morrison, there it is. Really.
Mr. Morrison attended our last Energy committee meeting. Looked like an excellent addition. And in addition to that, he is has taught extensively at what is now called the Questrom School of Business. That's the graduate school for BU.
I didn't realize they had renamed.
Well, if you pay enough money, you get to change the name of the school.
Would they like to have a public safety building? I'm kidding. Back to what we were saying. Okay, so, do we have any questions or comments, or I'll entertain a motion?
I move that we accept Mr. Morrison's application for the Energy Committee.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Down to acceptance of donations to Mascoma Lakeside Park Trust Fund, $50. Can I just ask, do we have to approve $50?
It has to be on the agenda for you to accept.
We have to accept like $5 even? Oh, I thought there was like a dollar limit. Okay, well, no, now I've learned.
Anything under 10,000 has to be on the agenda and listed as dollar amount. If it's 10,000 or greater, you have to. So just vote to accept.
For $5, right? You could totally spend. No, I've learned something.
So we need a
tonight.
motion to
Yes.
vote to accept?
Yeah,
Motion to accept.
thank you.
Okay. I move we accept.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Okay. Acceptance of donations to Community Nursing Program Trust Fund, $9,100 in aggregate. Where did them go?
What?
Yeah. Starting off very nicely.
Do something and they did it.
Yeah,
Right.
well, I move that we accept the $9,100 with our thanks.
I second. Good start.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, personnel policy review. Pull out your giant packet, my friends. And have a chat.
I'm gonna start off by saying this doesn't have to be completed tonight, but we would like to get it completed to get these changes made. This is a long time coming. Soon after I started, there were some changes that had been made in the past that staff wanted me to look at. And so, when I put together my executive team, which is the department heads of all the departments, consisting of Elisa, Rob Taylor for land development, Jim Taylor, Roy Holland, and myself. We went page by page, section by section, through the whole personnel policy. Since I started, it's taken quite some time. We had some debates back and forth, but we came to consensus that we feel that this is a right move in the right direction to make some changes to the personnel policy without making sweeping changes that are gonna disrupt the employees of the organization.
So I'd like to propose an approach for consideration. There are the red line components, which are the ones that your team has collaborated on. And I wondered if, well, I think there's red in there's blue. I'm wondering if the board would entertain considering those as a first step, if there was anything in there, and then going through. I have certainly other questions, but I wondered if we broke it off into, can we agree that the changes that were made thus far by the town team are ones we want to announce?
And the red and blue line are listed in the significant changes on the two cover sheets, except for minor, typos.
Yeah, and I have some
Changing select
like
board to select.
commas and.
And I thought that was very helpful to have that cover page, which
Thank you.
delineated those.
How do you feel about tackling it that way, and then maybe we can?
I would agree with that or any other major changes that you guys have seen.
Yeah.
I've been walking around dog earing my.
I don't have an issue with separating out the changes from the existing personnel policy, if you will. I acknowledge that by doing so, we are accepting the changes, however, so I don't know that we're really differentiating between the two because they override the existing policy.
Yeah, I think just talking about them separate is what she's talking about. Let's talk about the red line stuff, and I would recommend we do that first, and then if there's other things that were not redlined in there that you guys want to discuss.
So I'll give you like.
So should we talk about specific items? either that are in the policy or not in the policy that we'd like to talk about?
No, I'm saying, so you have your copy with the red line and the blue line. I'm saying if we have addressed just that component first. So go through and say, if we have anything substantial, you know, I have a couple comments and stuff, but not anything big. Or something we disagree with on those proposed changes before we get into questions on pieces that were not touched. So for example, like I'll just give you like one of mine, right? I have a comment here, like, not a big deal, right? But then I have a bunch of questions, just general philosophy questions, questions for the town that are unrelated down here. So I'd like to skip this component and do this in the first instance and then come back to content and questions after. Is that, instead of going page by page and belaboring all of them? Is that? And do you have?
I know, I'm actually fine with that approach, but I don't know how the others feel.
I'm good.
Eric, what do you think? Is it something?
That approach is fine.
Okay,
I have to bring my copy.
okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You recall, no,
Would you like me to go make some more copies?
why don't we take a brief pause and make,
If it's easy, yeah.
yeah, let's take two.
My copy's sitting on my dining room table.
Yeah. I've literally carried mine to every single meeting I've been in and worked on it, so.
I just need to.
I'm fine. It's not my time. Went through it.
Yeah.
My kid gave me her opinion on what I do with my spare time after I did that.
Just save some time while you're doing that. Can we go to public comments?
What do we have after this? Sure, you guys fine with that? Yep.
Yeah.
Public comment?
Okay. A couple of things. First of all, you may be aware that, there was some vandalism at, Mascoma Side Park, overnight last night.
No, I was.
There was a what?
Vandalism. The porta potties were turned on their side by a truck, and damaged a little bit, as well as making a horribly smelly mess. The kiosk had a number of things torn off of it. Luckily, they didn't break the plexiglass on the far side, which I had heard they had. I have put in a request to directly to the chief to work on the game cameras to that area to prevent future recurrence similar to occupancy. I would also like to start a privately funded $500 reward for information the arrest of a person who did this, person that did this, and we'll be seeking other type of donations of this government from the down funding. So that's that side of things.
Can I just pause you for 1 second? How does that would be something personally administered, not through, I just am
I
curious.
would think so, but that would be up to the select board. I can tell you that
That's the rest of
the police have looked at the game camera that is down there and they found some other evidence in there. They're investigating that.
Okay. Thanks, sorry, thank you.
So, secondly, relative to the special election, coming up in August, I'm working on getting a balanced organizing committee, and with the concurrence of the candidates to, do a candidates forum the week or week and a half beforehand. And that's still coming together because it is a partisan election.
I think that'll be great.
Um,
I so appreciated it prior to the selectmen's election, and I've already talked to at least one of the candidates, and he's very open to it, and I think it's a terrific thought.
One is reviewing it with his,
So Julie's name goes in the top slot.
representatives, and we'll get that to you this week.
And I'm so pleased that we don't have to do a primary setup of all the booths.
All I have.
Time wise is good, choice wise is always, choice is good. it's nice to not have to do the physical setup, but it's always nice to be inclusive.
To have an election.
Oh, no, we have, no, primary. What I'm saying is we don't have a primary per se. We have an election.
Right.
So we don't have to set up the booths for the primary, break them down, then put them back for the election.
Later, yeah.
Exactly.
We do have candidates.
We have
candidates.
we have a Republican candidate and
Oh,
we
they
have a
did come up
Democratic
with one.
candidate.
Yep.
Yeah, they did.
The very last minute,
It must have.
Who are they?
I missed this.
John Keane.
And David.
K-E-A-N.
Right.
David Frack.
And
David
they,
Frank.
So since they've declared themselves as different parties, we don't actually have to have a primary, thank goodness.
Right.
We only have to have the election itself on August 22nd.
Lindsay will handle all of that.
Exactly, except the setting.
The time when they're names, yeah, we're missing
And being there.
And being there, yeah.
one.
But I think that's terrific. I think,
Well, I believe, as I understand it, there's debate between whether all select board members or just a quorum have to be there.
I can just go this right edge, right?
We're checking with the
Right, like
Attorney
what,
General.
like here?
yeah, Lindsay, I'm sure will, now that it's 5 people, we'll get that question answered. I know that's something she's
There's been
probably gonna be on top of.
some debate on the moderators. Listserv.
Thanks. Not.
Yeah.
Okay. Little modification to the form. I just made more lines.
That's all I
But
have.
I think that's great.
Thank you. Is there public comment on it?
I wanted to go back 1 second and ask you a question, which I'm sure you are aware of. At the pavilion, as I bicycled over there in the past, near dusk, I noticed that none of the lights are on motion sensor under that pavilion. Can we consider that at some point, that the lights underneath there might be controlled by a motion sensor?
I think that's certainly worth considering. The choice at the time that it happened, and I wasn't even on the committee when that decision was made, was that by having it lighted, it was less likely to be light constantly. It was less likely to be a public nuisance.
I recall some discussion on Hughes Park remaining lit. And I'm not saying that's the sole reason, but there was also.
The way that it's constructed, however, with the hill on one face and the long parking lot on the other, I think it's worth considering some motion sensor lighting.
We have to look into that.
Yeah.
Because it may also be a consideration of not supposed to be used after dark, so. It would be
I will bring that to committee, and I'll bring that to the committee. One other thing about the porta potties, I did happen to be there when the person was cleaning up, putting it back together. And he requested that some sort of barriers be placed around them so that trucks couldn't do that. Jim's working on it to coordinate with the business to figure out what the best way to do it, which may even involve at some point a concrete pad and or moving on the position. So
We have rocks.
they're on top of it.
Rocks are free. And I'm being serious. They have the rocks that.
We have them back here someplace.
Yeah, well, and that's what we've used along the front and be true to without violating any kind of.
Whatever the assessing is, they're taking it and add online.
Okay, so thank you for the.
I thought that's what it was, but I didn't.
No, it's fine. I thought maybe, but. Okay. Thanks, Yola.
Where's the?
Yes.
Okay. The explanation is this is not us, and then we have 2 spare lines, well, not spare lines, but I.
I'll let you get through those.
Big
couple.
people,
This is a little different.
Fine.
There you go.
So contact person, we're not
It's
writing.
not in, yeah, that's
Okay.
really, or at least I don't want it to be me. It's anybody. Could be me. Could be you, could be someone in the town office who answers.
Don't use that line.
Been doing this for many.
Don't use that line.
Yeah, unless you want to be a contact person.
Don't put your name on the contract.
If you do put yourself.
This one.
If you do, you're
Application that
responsible
we're
for.
doing the
This
election
is me, I'm like,
22nd
"Ed, I don't want to be this.
For the House representative.
I should put that in here.
true.
Okay.
I'm sure of us will get this. Just the one which notifies for the election, not all the blanks are filled in.
Which one's missing?
The name of the town.
Oh, that one. When do you think we'll do it?
We let those ones slide.
You got it from the
Put
state.
that new logo on it too.
Yeah, so just put it in the inbox.
Getting in trouble here, man.
What?
All right.
I had a question on this and I knew it was coming across the desk. What is PA 28, please? I think I know what it
That's
is.
an inventory of taxable property form. Basically, you mail it out and you ask people, have they made any changes to their house? Who's living in the house? Do they have any pets? And they mail it back completely inaccurately. And it's a lot of postage and work and it's very inaccurate.
It's exactly what I thought it was. Yeah, I thought that's what it was. Yeah.
Canaan does it, and I know some of them go back with, yes, I have raccoon. Right? I mean, literally, you can write anything you want on it.
We had people we knew were not residents, but they owned property, and because they were at the cottage, they would fill it all out as if they were there, so the information was pretty useless.
Okay, so let's personnel policy this up, and so, yeah, what do we? Oh, we're almost there. I think last pieces. So the first 1, 2, 3 pages are, well, the cover pages are the recommended changes. So let's hit those, and does anybody have something that is a change they don't want to see made? I think it's the way to approach that piece. I have like a couple of areas.
Comments, current or question.
Yeah.
And it really seems pretty sensible.
Yeah. I mean, I tossed in a few, like, just for an example, benefits will be prorated based on a 40-hour week. I went period, where a conflict of the policy arises, comma, right? Like, that's just some basic grammar. So I don't think I can just toss that to you.
Yes.
Is that? Because I think that's just really not something we need to go through.
That's not substantial.
That's exactly what okay. I wanted to say it out loud so that everybody knows that that's,
Unless it changes the intent of the paragraph by the punctuation, then it's.
I don't think so. I think it makes it not a run-on sentence.
That is.
Which, when everybody knows that when you're going and fixing old stuff or modifying, there's always a danger of accidentally creating a run-on sentence. So, I had nothing in terms of content or substance on any of that.
Well, my only question is on one question is on page 2D, got the page 1-2.
Oh,
it's like, sorry.
No, that's fine. 1-2, yep.
When it says the proration will, is it a rolling 12 months or the prior calendar 12 months? Yeah, but then it's.
So, well, the first year of employment obviously is 1 year, but then it's gonna end up coinciding with our budget cycle.
Well, that's my question.
It has to coincide with the budget cycle.
So it's a calendar 12 months, but not a rolling 12 months.
Okay, that's a really good one.
Yeah, we might.
I mean, either way is fine. It's just important to know which one it is.
It may be good if it says that the first year of employment is done on a pro rata basis, so that we can then get it around to the calendar basis. So if someone's employed for 9 months, that could be calculated rather than having them wait 17 months.
Well, when they start, the first few months of the year, because we already have a budget in place, we can base it on the budgeted hours. But at that point,
I would just.
They
do
may or may
calendar
not work
because
exactly
Most of these times, we're gonna have someone in the position before they started and we'll still have a pro rata timeframe. And I did make mention in ours that if there's any major change in hours or something like that, then we will just physically notify that to note that there's a change and we're gonna base it on what we're changing to. And so I mean, a lot of these, we had those conversations of
Yeah.
what's clarifying and what makes it so cumbersome you can't work within it. So I think just adding calendar.
Yeah, I mean, administratively, calendar year is certainly much less complicated than having somebody have to keep track of, well, it's now been 52 weeks since they switched, and now we, you know.
Yep. Okay.
I'm so happy that we're finally select board. It was very funny. I proposed that several years ago and both my fellow select people went,
I know you did. I've been saying select board because, well, I don't think I'm a man, but you know.
We do that and we're also semi-clarifying in there that we're gonna select board keywords, because it could be done either way. And
Right, and I've been doing one because I just thought it together, but I think two makes sense. Oh, we can write to Merriam-Webster and lobby them. I had a question on paydays, which is page 4-2. Section 4.5,
yeah.
just a philosophical question. I know it says direct deposit is available and highly encouraged. The only reason I flagged that was I wondered if we shouldn't eliminate checks and go to pay cards, which is.
we're not allowed to.
We're not allowed to. That's
I
against the
think
Department of
it's
Labor.
New
rules.
Hampshire law to mandate.
Oh, it's New Hampshire. You can't do a pay. How does Hypertherm get away with it? Because they have no problem. They do not issue any checks.
That just means nobody's challenged it.
Yeah.
Okay.
If someone.
I was gonna say, because that's all, because they don't do any checks. That's why I was wondering.
We have to do a paper check if it's requested. And so we
Interesting.
encourage people just to do direct deposit. Most people do.
I want to be paid in cash.
Nope.
That,
That's not.
That's not, no, I know. I'd rather, no, I just think it's interesting. Okay, nope, that answers my, okay.
We had that discussion.
That is, fun. No, because it is significantly, it's issuing a paper check. I don't know what the cost to this institution is, but in most places I've worked, the cost is anywhere between $7 and $17 roughly, depending, because it's cumbersome.
Yeah.
Um. Page 6-5. Small b, short-term, just the paragraph starting with short-term disability is effective. Second, well, sorry, it's the second paragraph after that. That's, I'm sorry, it's 6-5. I'm sorry, I'm skipping you guys. That's my bad.
That's all right.
If somebody has any something in between.
Yeah, so I don't have anything between you. Don't want to skip people. I should ask,
We did this in our meeting.
yeah, I should ask, does anyone have anything before 6-5? The short-term disability pays approximately 66.67%. I wondered, since we're fixing that paragraph, does that ever change based on who we're using, or is that like a set?
Usually pretty close to that across the country.
Okay, because I thought mostly like our 60%. So I don't know. I just didn't know if that's fine, as long as it's approximately, we can get away with it. Fair, while we were tweaking that paragraph.
Do the employees pay for sick, short-term disability?
So we pay for that.
That's not an insured program.
They're covered under AFA.
That's just a benefit program.
the town is part.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Okay. And there's no differentiation between exempt and non-exempt with that policy? It's the same.
I jumped to 6-6. Does anyone have anything before that?
Sort of a little, where sick leave, I have a question on, not the sick leave buyback, but it, Blend.
What's the page number?
well, trying to find it now.
That's after.
6-7.
Is it 6-7? I'll wait till we get there then.
Okay. Does anyone have anything before 6-6? small g, starting with regular full-time employees. That 50, I was just curious, the 50%, is that what most other towns do or municipalities?
It bounces around and a lot of towns have a limit somewhere. We went back and forth on this one a little. It's been a while since I did it, but I did an analysis of this when I was at Weathersfield, and it seemed like somewhere in that 7,000 to 8,000 range was where people would opt out and stay out because it made economical sense to them, to kind of still saving the town 50% of that. And then one thing we talked about, and you'll see it a few times through this policy, is trying to set policy that changes as the prices change. That 3,000 gets antiquated after a few years, so that's not much compared with this. And so staying with that 50% of the single person, it adjusts as our health insurance adjusts, and it's still a very beneficial.
And it
move
keeps
for
you
the
out of
town.
singling out people based on marital status and children, which I worry about. Okay, I just wanted to,
Yeah, we had a
I-
lot of those discussions, trying to keep it fair, trying to keep it economical, trying to do it in a way where it encourages people to opt out, because that's the biggest benefit for the town. I know I've had some of those concerns in the past, why are you paying them not to take our health insurance, but it financially makes sense.
well, if you get, say, let's just call it 3,000 for, no, there's another, I need a number. And you're getting health insurance for PPC Corporation that costs you 3,000 their share.
Why is that?
Yeah, but it costs the town.
They're deleting.
Exactly. No, it's an easy win.
They're simply deleting it.
And I know.
So we
the
did
school
talk
district-
about that a lot,
They're-
actually.
so they're minimizing.
Lisa did a
This
spreadsheet for us
simplifies the
showing
entire
how this
policy.
would work out, and we came to figure that that was a good medium point that would actually move as health insurance has.
I'm a little confused.
Okay.
Page 6.4 and 6.5,
Yep, sorry.
bottom of 6.4, top of 6.5.
Yep.
Why is that all deleted?
So that is moving to the end as an addendum because we're changing the percentage of the employee share each year. So it was 5, 10, and 15%, then it went to 6, 11, and
Okay.
16. And as we change, we can just change that one page at the end instead of doing something in the middle.
Gotcha.
Okay. Good catch.
But you know, someone coming from private education, I think, wow, that's a nice insurance policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not these numbers anymore. It hasn't been for a while.
Okay.
Is the HRA funded by the town or by the individual?
The HRA is funded by the town.
Okay. Okay, so then it's fair. So a person who opts out of the insurance fund would not be able to participate in the HRA.
Correct.
So,
It's bullshit.
Yeah.
That is not sad.
six. Actually, it's closer to
Okay.
I do it where I can save it out.
seven.
6.7 tuition reimbursement. That's new, right?
Well, actually, that was approved by the Board of Selectmen previously. It just had not been incorporated into the policy prior to this. It was sort of a separate addition to the existing policy.
Right, so, because we struck out the previous language at 2,500 and
Correct.
changed to 3,000. My question is, and I don't know the answer. What's the average cost of a current course? Like, I have no idea what's reasonable because I can't tell you anything I've looked at. It's been a ton of money, but I went to private school, so that's not necessarily a reasonable basis, right? So I'm just asking, like, can you get a community college course or a course that would be helpful to our team for $3,000? Is that, okay, I said my education was unreasonable.
Yeah, I haven't taken
I paid
classes
for it.
for a while, but this has been used a few times since
Okay.
I've been here,
Okay.
and
And it's helpful.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I would even say if it was 3,500 or something for a course, the town paying 3,000 of that is very helpful. Yes. It's still benefiting the employee as well.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to make sure like both ways, right? Like, does it benefit the employee and is it also still an incentive?
And we've also been, I don't want to say strict, but we make sure that it's something that'll benefit the town. They're not taking classes to.
The promissory note component, we discussed before, how does that work for public safety training? Do we do a promissory note with them or like
a
academy?
Contract for them, run academy. We do, and we, on one of our officers that left, we enforced that contract. And paid out the rest of the contract. So.
Does that, I just wanted to know, how does that practice and tie into this? You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to see them at cross hairs.
They have a separate agreement for reimbursement for the police training versus this, which is just applies to everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, and most of the time when we hire someone for the police force that's not trained, it's part of their hiring packet that they sign into this contract.
Just further down that page on 6-7. Where it says 1, 2, and under small b, and then 1, 2, and 3, and it lists associate's degree, bachelor's degree, and master's degree. It says the amount added to base pay. Should that say annual base pay? Right, because people have their monthly base pay or, no, you think it's clear? Okay.
It's fine.
This is me, I'm picky. So, no, that's fine. If you feel like we've got it covered, I am good. What else you guys got? Shout them out.
In your view as the manager, do you view the online courses to be equivalent to an on-site presence?
I'm gonna say that's a hard question to answer, and I'm
That's why I
gonna say
asked it.
that from someone that's, I
I've done
got my bachelor's and master's online. My bachelor's course was decent. I would say it was close to comparable with the in-class bachelor's, except teachers were sometimes easier, sometimes harder to get a hold of, but in my master's, I could probably argue that the online classes were more in-depth and better. But I think that's gonna be program specific.
And even course specific.
And course specific.
I've taken them both ways, and something like statistics, you take it online, it's statistics.
My daughter took an online Spanish class. That's horrible.
Yeah,
I'll let you know that.
yeah, so no, the online language
On
class,
my master's in public administration, the people that I know that went to a state school there, they talked about state law. So all my friends that got, Idaho law inside and out, but I don't work in Idaho. So going to an online across the nation class, we got more philosophical and what is a TIF district? How does it work? How does it work in different places? What are the different laws? And I believe that gave me a better education than knowing how one state does it. So I think there's too many parameters to say.
Well, I noticed it more because it's up to your judgment to decide whether someone who asks to be reimbursed for a course that they took online isn't differentiated from a course that they may not have taken online, that it could have been one that they went to and attended, 1 weekend a month for 2 years, for example.
Well, I think that's where and maybe even some other ones, we're gonna ask for the course curriculum and what the explanation of the class is and try to determine what that is. But, some of that may be a little antiquated too, because at the time that this was actually initially written, online classes were probably a little newer and it's a little more mainstream now.
And can I assume that you will, given the times that we're in, put a jaundiced eye to for-profit colleges?
They're gonna be accredited.
Yeah.
I mean, they do need to be accredited. They need to be classes that are.
you guys are ruining my business plan.
But I think you need to look at that too, because.
I think it's okay for you to look at it, but I think you need to look at it with a very jaundiced eye.
Well, and I think you need to fully understand, which I don't fully, but the education system. I mean, my daughter spent lots of money to go to the University of Utah, a highly prestigious SEC school. And they took online classes through BYU at University of Utah as part of their main course curriculum. So a lot of classes are going online now, and you cannot get them any other way, even through some major universities.
Yeah, they're doing the over enrollment component too for some of the basic classes. They don't have enough seats physically. So like, that's why I picked statistics as a good one. You could go to a private university that's very expensive and they could be like, oh, but this class is remote to Toronto. Right? And you get what you get. If you want to take it and graduate on time, you do it.
And the education system's changing rapidly.
I mean, they're basically little mini corporations. They buy each other, they make mergers, they make deals.
Well, I know a retired educator who would be available to help review those requests as they come along and could probably put a very good qualification as to whether something should be reimbursed or not. If you want, I can give you his phone
I
number.
wish I knew someone like that.
Yeah.
Well, we can look. I can tell you they're minimal. I've done 2 since I've been here. So it doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
But I think investing in our team is typically a good move. I didn't have any more substantial questions. Did you guys have other ones on pages where it was redlined or added blue?
Under the sick leave, 7.5. It was more of a comment, not a differentiation from what you've written necessarily. But I wonder whether exempt employees ought to be allowed a certain amount rather than an accumulation amount when they're hired. My job experience has taught me that if a senior manager type person has a serious illness, there needs to be a little bit of a definition as to how long you can support them under a salary based on their illness. And at this point, that would mean somebody that's only been there for a year, let's say town manager, would only been there a couple of years, would only have 96 hours per year accumulated, and therefore wouldn't necessarily be remunerated.
Well, you'd have FMLA
Effective.
still though.
I think you need to look at it in multiple factions, and another one of the things we talked about a lot in here is this policy gives the town manager, and if it happened to be me, the select board, a lot of autonomy to make those one-on-one decisions instead of trying to write an all-encompassing policy that. And again, with that, I would hope that a town manager or somebody would get some of those accommodations, but I think you also need to look at that at time and place, what's happening in the town, what's the probability of them coming back. And so, I mean, you have your FMLA protections and those things as well, but I think that's something that you want to do on a case by case basis and not.
Well, FMLA you get, but you have your
You get the
short-term
time, but you don't
disability.
get paid.
Well, you have your short-term
It can be
disability.
concurrent as well. It's-
Yeah, you have your short-term disability,
Plan
which
members
I've
different.
done it.
Yeah, but the short-term disability is capped by percentage, as we saw in earlier pages.
Right, and the number of hours that are capped for sick leave coincides. If you're maxed out, you'll have a full paycheck.
I just didn't know if anyone wanted to consider something like a larger number of hours grandfathered, if you will, or granted to an exempt employee rather than accumulating on an annual basis.
I think as a general policy, we want to treat all our employees the same.
Yeah.
And I think if we come into a situation like that, we hang out in non-public and.
I would say as an exempt employee, I would like to be treated the same as all other employees. That, especially from a management position, going, yeah, I get more than you to start out, just doesn't look good. So, and then I do the same thing with employees. I mean, we've had employees come in, not have the sick leave, have a major issue, and we will work with them to keep up.
As you alluded to in this, yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we've done that. We had another employee, I won't name names, that had something pre-scheduled coming in, and I don't normally do it, but I worked with them to do what you would call like negative comp time. So we gave them the time off up front and they worked it back off. So we try to add that flexibility in and work with our employees the best we can.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like that has happened in several places that I've worked where if you haven't earned the time yet, you just borrow from the future and it's fine.
Yeah, we try not to do it often because it can put you in a bad spot, but on a case by case basis, we work with people and we try to be as fair as possible between all.
I was just looking to consider codifying it as opposed to putting it up to the discretion of management, if you will.
The other hard thing with, I guess, the executives, unless you have a major catastrophic medical, we're salaried employees and we can flex and move our schedule a lot easier than others can.
Yeah, but salary itself is not defined per se, so a major catastrophic illness doesn't necessarily indicate how long you'll receive your salary. That's the issue. And I've had experience with that, where we've had to make those decisions because it wasn't codified.
And I think I think it's better for the town not to codify that and to let the town make that decision, even though it may be myself or somebody in the upper echelon that has to deal with that or.
I think too, you want to leave some flexibility for a future board. It might not be us to have that conversation with the upper echelon, and the expectation would be that they would make a good decision based on current financials, current projects, and the mitigating circumstances. I like the idea of not binding a future board or administration too hard. I know that it's a gray area, but we can't imagine all of the fun scenarios that will come up. COVID. On 7-9, I don't know if you guys are that far.
Yes.
Page 7-9 or?
Yeah, page 7-9. There's, section 7.6, unless someone has something before that, they all have. I just was, 7.6 says maternity and it adds /maternity, which I think is a good idea, except I think it'd be easier to just say parental leave. And then we don't have maternity and paternity, would just be like parental leave. You can call yourself spaceship aliens or whatever, you're still a parent, right? Because you're a parental unit and that's not gender or anything. And it's short.
Yeah.
I like short.
Yeah.
Is that? I'm
No,
just-
that's,
But I do think that acknowledging paternity leave is a fair, and I acknowledge that move was made in the interest of fairness.
We don't mention adoptions per se under what will now be called parental leave. Is that something that we should consider?
Is that considered part of childbirth? Yeah.
I think that's a
lot of companies are granting parental leave for adoptions.
Really cumbersome thing, because I would definitely think that someone should get some time off for that. Did you get? I don't know, I think how much time would be really dependent on what the adoption is, who the person is, where they're coming from, all those types of things.
Well, because sometimes you have to take half a year off. China. Well, sometimes you go and you get stuck there for an awful long time. I'm not trying to be mean.
And this is actually all about disability and illness.
Yeah.
As opposed to just having time off to spend with your child or.
or yeah, I know someone had to go to Russia, spend 2 weeks there before they're allowed to.
Yeah, I think there's so many variances
Yeah.
that,
It would be,
like Pete said, we can't write a
tough on the
policy
town,
for
I
every single possibility.
But you're right, it is on the kind of medical side of the leave thing, so that might be a topic.
I would just hope that we would be open to the possibility that if someone does, as an example, a real life example, go to Russia in the next year and adopt one of the 200,000 Ukrainian children that are there, that we would be open to the possibility of adoption leave.
I think we have to hope
we would
that
be
we have a good executive.
Yeah.
Yes, no, agreed.
And that's true. And in fairness, the voters are gonna support people who see policies, I would hope, that they align with. So you might find that suddenly the voters feel very strongly one way or another and they elect folks that are different from us. I think that was it for my kind of job time. You guys got more? And then everything else was the appendices that got moved or removed.
We decided to take out forms that change on regular. This is
Such a good idea, such a good idea.
It's just a form.
It's a form. It's an operation,
Yes.
piece of paperwork, but you don't need us for form.
That was our.
Shorter personnel policy.
Not by much, but yes.
Have you, on the military leave aspect of things, have you, I don't know if we have anyone in the reserves or guard at the moment. Have you been asked about anyone being reimbursed for their 2 weeks? Summer training?
We had someone. We had someone that
We've definitely done that.
we worked with them.
Some companies do grant a reimbursement for that time.
I think we reimbursed to make whole.
That's all it is a reimbursement to make whole.
So
Yeah.
whatever they.
That's
get,
generally how it's
they'll
done.
make up the difference
Exactly.
To make sure that they're not losing money. Yeah. A lot of this policy is based around that. You'll see changes that part-timers that are not allowed to have any vacation leave now get their prorated little amount. You know, I've had employees in the past that were worried that worked 10 hours or so for the town that were worried that we're going on vacation, that they were gonna lose that. That small little amount for the town is not worth it. That employee shouldn't have to be worried about the $100 they would have paid.
No, they shouldn't have to be worried about the small amount of money that makes up the difference between reserve duty and
Yeah, so we,
a working job.
we definitely try to work with our employees to do that.
And that is covered under section 7.11 on page 7-11.
So
Great.
do we want to make a motion to approve the markup
As a member.
as amended? Is that something you guys feel comfortable with? And then we can come back and take another pass, because I know you want to do this again.
We can do that next.
Yeah, no, I'm saying and revisit the like more in like questions next time.
Some of us would rather have a root canal.
I have gone through it. I don't know if everyone else has had an ample opportunity, but I've been through it page to page and I'm comfortable with the policy.
No, I'll give it, I'll give that to
Give
you.
that to us and we'll.
No, I have questions like, do we do this? And then I will tell you guys, like, I had a question.
What I will tell you is if
protected
you
classes.
approve this.
Yeah.
We will.
Yeah.
If it's in our policy, we will.
We'll do it. I mean, the most substantial question that I had that I wanted to discuss with you guys, and this is just my individual question, was, there was a question of protected classes and emphasizing on sexual harassment.
That is, I remember we had this discussion once before. And that is wording from the.
No, not this part is not wording, not the part I have. that I- Yeah, no, I know what
It
you
may have been
mean.
consistent.
No. I know what you mean, because we definitely have had that
We did
conversation,
have a
but this is related to, goodness, oh, yeah, so. Like highlighting, it cannot be stressed enough that the town will not tolerate any form. So I'm not a big believer in highlighting and restating something you've already stated in a policy. That's right. You say you don't do it, you don't do it. You don't say it again and make it in bold and like have a jumping fly swatter.
What page are you
So
looking
page
at?
1.5. The second to last paragraph. So it starts with harassment can come from superiors, fellow employees, clients, visitors, or vendors. And then men as well as women can be victims of sexual or other harassment. So I don't think we should be calling out any gender. I think that we don't need that. Anyone, it could just say anyone can be a victim of sexual harassment, right? Like, we don't need to give a special classification like, oh, by the way, men can't, because we give preferential treatment to men in American society already. So we don't need to say that. Anyone can, and that's the truth of the matter. And I don't think we need that. It cannot be stressed enough that the town will not tolerate any form of illegal discrimination or harassment. Violations of this policy, whether intended or not, will not be permitted. Like, that's silly. You can't do it.
So it just changed the word men to anyone.
Yeah, anyone. And then I
In
think
fact, get rid of the men as well as women, just put anyone
Anyone
and be
who's not
victims.
anyone. And then I mean, I would personally like to strike the highlighted because I think you already said all of the things you can't do. Why do you have to say it again? That,
I think I don't think it should, I'm agreeing with you. I don't think it should be bolded. I'm not a fan of that it cannot sentence.
mhm.
But I think violations of this policy, whether intended or not, is a critical sentence.
I
I
mean,
think
that's,
you can take that middle one out and
Take the middle one out and unbold the last one.
I mean, I guess my thing is like, if you violate any policy, it's not supposed to be permitted. So why is it in here? I don't know.
No, but I do think, I mean,
The
I
extra.
agree with you there, but I think you really stress this.
Right there. And change it
Yeah,
to a generic anyway.
You would think in this day and age, it would not be a big issue, but it isn't.
Oh, right, yeah.
It is.
No, I just didn't know if the extra language made a stronger point. To me, it doesn't. It's like, okay, this is redundant, what's gonna belong, but also I've been, every single time you onboard to somewhere, it's like, you can't sexually harass me. No kidding. No, you have to, but the training and the words don't stop
We're
people.
also working with a wide range of individuals,
Right.
from lowest levels to the highest level.
True, if we rewrote this at a third to fourth grade reading level, we would have more time. I'm not saying, for you guys, I'm saying that if we were required to, like you are on a lot of forms, that would be very hard to do. So
Did you have any more?
that was really my big change, other than just general questions, and I don't know. Like, I have questions like, is this a run-on sentence? Not so sure, but that I can just write to you guys unless you. John wants to do this 5 more times, he's an English teacher.
Do you want to have a second meeting and go through the rest of the policy?
Do you guys want to bring back your copies?
No,
Annotated?
how about, would you guys be okay?
I had read through it before.
Send me any recommended changes, and if there's nothing substantial, we'll highlight the changes we do make and bring it back to you, but if there's something substantial, we'll come back to talk.
How about we give you preliminary approval and agree that if there's more changes, we'll come back and do it? Is that
Yeah, if they're substantial.
substantial?
I mean, really,
I
sentences-
I want you to be able to move ahead.
Yeah.
So,
Does
yes,
someone
I
want to
agree
make
with
a
that.
motion to that effect?
I think it's preliminary approval to, move forward and, finalize your copy. Allowing the select board to, review it briefly one last time. Would that be fair? Before implementing it.
I'd like to just see it get reviewed and review, like, implement the highlighted stuff that we just went through.
Yeah.
Implement that, and if there's something more substantial somebody sends along, it can bring it back up and we can do another
Yeah, we can do
approval.
things section by
Is that-
section.
Okay, can we make?
Okay. Well, you just said it.
Oh,
I'll
Emily,
second, I'll second
I
that.
second that.
you wanna make me a motion?
Oh, I just turned what he said into a motion.
Fabulous.
Okay.
Emily's good.
We're moving.
That's what I really want.
We're there.
Can you add in there, she's good.
Right.
Can we just add in there to implement
Yeah.
August 1st?
Implement August 1st.
And the intent is to implement by August 1st.
Okay, so you made the motion, I'll make the second, since
Great.
I collaborated, and any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstentions, unanimous. Thank you, guys.
Excellent.
The next big thing.
Quick other subject, just want to touch base because I've been asked about it a 3 times now. Are we on target for the demolition project at 478? For the fire job?
Yeah, that's in the packet.
I know it's there, but I mean, to the best of your knowledge, and I know you just got back.
As far as I know, but we have received a note from Hamlin's that
That-
they've received.
that
the
letter.
contract.
Yeah.
Right, I know, and we have that. I just want to know if you've heard anything, because it's specified as to when they're gonna start,
It
which
says
is only
July
1 week.
25th. Yeah,
I
we won't
have
know
not
till they
heard
drive
anything, but I
there.
am not there.
Yeah.
Would you keep us informed if for some reason it gets delayed? Because I've had 3 people that have come to me and said,
Send them to Ed,
Yeah.
that's what I
when
do.
is it?
No, it needs to come back. And the letter,
Oh, no question about that. The people were asking, gee, they're not gonna delay it, are they? You know,
as
and they
far as I
should.
know,
Okay.
we gave them a 20-day notice and he's made action.
Very effective program right there. I thought it the way that it worked. I thought it was great.
Thank you. All right, if there's no further discussion on anything, I think the rest is just
Any
information.
public comments?
We did public comment when you were at the copy. Do you want to rerun on
I
public
love a
comment?
rerun because in listening to this personnel discussion, I've got two questions.
Sure.
Question number one is, if people are getting a payback, do we make sure that they have insurance?
Yeah.
Yes. Question number two is a little bit tougher. A lot of companies nowadays are saying, if your spouse has insurance available where they work, they have to get it there. They can't get on our policy and then they get a payout.
Yeah, I hate those policies.
I know you do, but a lot of companies are doing it now because.
What happens if both companies?
No, that means you have to be on yours and they have to be on theirs.
Yeah, it just.
And they can make the decision whether or not they want the family piece there or not. But when somebody's getting, basically when somebody's getting a $5,000 payment over here and it's costing us $25,000 because they are then getting it on ours, that I think.
We can have that discussion another
Yeah.
night. I think,
Well,
but no, I
that's
think
a
it's a fair
discussion.
question.
Yeah, because, well, yeah, I'm not sure if Dartmouth does it now, but I know Hitchcock was doing it. A lot of,
That's not how Dartmouth is doing it now.
they're not?
No.
Okay, but there's a lot of large employers who do that because they're seeing the spouse getting a payout because they're on the insurance, the Dartmouth policy because there's less of a payout.
I've never heard of such a thing
Yeah.
before
Yeah,
tonight.
some companies
Yeah.
have, yeah.
Yeah. If it's available where you work, you
I
have
left
to
my
take it
husband on a
there and
separate
you can't
policy.
take it from
Yeah.
a spouse's employer.
Right.
When you're getting a $5,000 payout for not taking it where.
Yeah, I've never heard about this payout thing.
Oh, you've never heard of the payout piece?
No.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
No, no.
Oh, yeah.
And they get large. I mean,
They get good chunks. 3,000 is bottom of the line, you know, there's 10,000
Yeah.
payouts.
No, what Dartmouth does allow is simply that an employee can purchase a single, two-person or family.
Right.
And they can choose from that triad of choices. And therefore, whatever's left over, if the other spouse is working somewhere else, they can pick up a policy with their employer if that's as a total financial benefit.
Right.
That's the closest that Dartmouth comes to that sort of a
Yeah.
plan.
As a small business, when I ran things, it was to my benefit that an employee who had the option of a family plan with a larger employer, did that, but they often were able to get a better policy than I was able to provide, and pay for. And it made sense to make an investment toward their additional expense of going from a single member to a family.
Right.
So there's a
Yeah.
balance there.
There is.
Yeah, and
it
I
is a
think
balance.
an investment
It's fair.
in family.
Because some companies offer, at no cost to the employee, single coverage, 100%.
Yeah.
And therefore, the spouse need only purchase, let's say they have a child, themselves and a child, or themselves and two children. So they can purchase a smaller policy without buying the entire family plan.
And I
And
think,
therefore, financially, they can save some money. And that's not a bad thing. That's a good financial decision for some folks.
what I would like to look at it, this is my personal thought, is I like to look at it from the financial point for the town, but also we need to take care of families because people come to work when their family stays healthy, right? So, I
Well,
mean,
it
you
may
want
change
your employees
jobs
to
if
come.
it's not good for their family.
Right, and they switch jobs, right? So you, in order, employee retention wise, in terms of being available and getting your best work out of people, it's also really important to make sure they're not taking like the worst possible option because it's cheaper. So somewhere in the middle is a happy medium. I just don't. Insurance is the worst. Do you
I'm
wanna?
gonna say it. Motion
for
to
it.
adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Exemptions? It's unanimous, shocker, guys. Thank you. Good meeting.
Very good.